And I'm good.
Go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Beverly School Committee's Finance and Facilities meeting. Today is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. We're meeting in a remote hybrid model using a remote meeting application, which allows for remote participation and for public access to the open portions of our meeting. BevCam is streaming and broadcasting our meeting tonight, Channel 6 and HD 1073. Thank you, BevCam. Beginning on June 16th, 2021, with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, which were twice extended and now further extended until March 31st of 2025, local governments boards were granted provisions to, among other things, hold meetings remotely by suspending the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present. These acts ask our body to use technological methods to allow for safe public access. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation of members, although through that permission, the chair and a quorum need to be physically present when this act and its extensions expire. This is a Finance and Facilities meeting, which means there is not an opportunity for members of the public to address the body. Our regular school committee meetings allow for public comment. Joining us today are members of the school committee, resident representatives, representation from the Beverly City Council, and various members of our district administration and leadership teams. I'll conduct a full roll call attendance in a minute for our record. Please. Bless you. Please remember that any audio and video, including your sneeze, that you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record. Here comes the roll call. On our committee, we have Dr. Silva.
Here.
Kim Coelho.
Here.
Mr. Manzo.
Here.
Ms. Spanks.
Here.
Mr. Copeland.
Here.
From the City Council, Councilor Rotundo. Fantastic, thank you. Also in the audience, we have at the table, Dr. Chirocek, Superintendent of Schools, for a very short time remaining, the Director of Finance and Operations, Ms. Jean Sherburne.
Here.
Our Administrator of Special Education and Pupil Personnel Services, Ms. Spolansky.
Here.
At the back table, the woman who's brave enough to try to fill Jean's shoes, Miss Emma Puglisi. It only took me 11 years to get Jean's name, Emma. You're in trouble. All right, and also back there is Erin Brown, and she has a million titles.
Here.
Okay, fantastic. All right. I am sharing on my screen our agenda for this evening, and our first order of business is approval of our meeting minutes from our last meeting. Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho, especially because you're keeping our little minutes over there. That's very helpful. I need a second.
Second.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Dr. Silva. Any questions, corrections? Oh, I should put them on the screen. Sorry. Here they are. Any questions, corrections, comments? Anybody want to say anything about the meeting minutes? Seeing none, the motion on the table. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes? Fantastic. That passes 6-0. Yes, ma'am.
I believe it would be 5-0 and one abstention. Ms. Spinks was not here last F and F.
Very nice. Good catch.
Okay.
All right. So, Ms. Spinks, you're abstaining. We're helping you say you're abstaining. Because you were not in attendance, you do not get to vote on what we talked about at that meeting. Okay, the next item on our agenda is gifts to schools. I'm going to put those were in your packet, and I'm sharing it on my screen. Apologies for you people in the back, because I don't know, even if I made it really big, how much you'd be able to see, but I will try to make it a little bigger. There we go. So in our gifts to schools, they're both listed. There are two items both listed under our district-wide. I'm looking for a motion to accept with gratitude these gifts to schools.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Second. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Are there any questions about these piles of money? Bless you. Also in the record, spring allergy season. Okay, seeing none, motion on the table. All those in favor? That passes 6-0. Next on our agenda, we have no grants, even though it was on the agenda. We put that there as a placeholder, and in fact, we have none this week, right, Ms. Sherburne? So next on the agenda is budget transfers. We have 2 of them. First, I'll put on our screen, budget transfer
Number 187?
187, is that the one I have up?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. I'm just going to scroll to the bottom, make sure we get it as big as possible for everybody trying to pay attention. Okay, budget transfer 187. I'm looking for a motion to approve this budget transfer.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Ms. Sherburne, would you like to speak to this transfer?
Yes, this transfer was, as I reported last month, I was going to be looking at some of the various accounts. I looked at the lunchroom monitor accounts, and we had some excess funds in some of the lines, and therefore we moved it to the instructional long-term substitute line.
Part of the meeting record. Any day we can laugh is a good day. Okay, does anybody have, yes, Mr. Manzo?
So I was just curious, I didn't think that the lunchroom monitor lines were really big to begin with, and you're transferring out, tens of thousands of dollars. Did we not hire as many people, or?
Some of the schools didn't need as many lunchroom monitors that we had. Originally, we had it under ESSER funding, and then we pushed it in. But then there's a couple schools have had difficulty in filling them, and I believe they're filling them with staff helping out in that area, but we didn't have any costs associated with that.
Any further questions?
Yeah, so is that a model that's going to remain consistent going forward? Or
We
will that
looked
need
at,
to
when we looked at this, we looked at, when we built the budget for FY '25, we looked at what the costs were for the last 3 years' averages. And when we budgeted for FY '25, we budgeted on what we thought we would need, based on the average.
And based upon that, you're looking at, so the numbers didn't grow this year, but having staff fill those roles?
Yes,
if needed.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to follow up on that. So the 3-year average, this year's average, are these new adjusted numbers or the original numbers?
It would be with the adjusted numbers.
Okay, fantastic. All right, any further questions? All right, there's a motion on the table. We did do the motion already, right? I'm a little over-caffeinated. All those in favor? That passes 6-0. Our next budget transfer.
Is number 1302.
All right, this is like, I can't make it big and get it all on one screen, so you guys get part of it on the screen in as big a font as I can make it. All right, I'm looking for a motion to accept this budget transfer, or at least begin discussions.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. A second? Is that Ms. Spanks?
Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Ms. Sherburne, do you want to speak to this one, or do you want to wait and just
Sure.
field questions?
Looking at this one here, I started off, you can kind of tell on the order of how I was entering it. I was looking at the facilities, heating, electric, utilities. Some accounts had some negatives, and then I looked into other locations, but because I was transferring from one cost center to the other, I had to bring it here, even though it was a like item. So therefore, that was the beginning of it. And then I was looking at the buildings and grounds. Department needed some funding in some of their various accounts. And then we had, the substitute line needed some more funds in there for the remainder of the year. And when we were building the budget for FY '25, we were eliminating the position of the assistant transportation director, and therefore I looked at the budget and realized that we still had the money in there for this year, and the position has been vacated. So therefore, that's where most of the funding went to.
Fantastic. All right, anybody have any questions on this particular budget transfer? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 6-0. Okay, our next item is our B&G report. I'm going to throw it up on the screen for a minute. You guys all had this in your packet. Again, due to the nature of our stacked meetings, we generally don't discuss this report. If you have any questions, we're cruising along here today. We could pose our questions at this instant in time, or as was normal, if you have questions on this report, you can always email them ahead of time. And then sometimes when that happens, we get the answers at this meeting. If you pose your questions ahead of time, then Jean can actually come prepared with the answers to your questions. That said, do I see anyone with any questions on the B&G report?
Linda, I would just like to add that, the first line in here talks about summer break, and they've told us what they're starting to do, the initial stages of planning for that. They are advertising for summer custodians to help with the maintenance, and they've reached out to, started engaging conversation with the principals. And we do have them on our schedule to appear in June for a discussion, so.
Right, so that's kind of a call out to all of our members sitting at this table. Just as we have Ms. Spolansky here today, we will have B&G in June, and so you can start thinking of any questions you want to ask to Mr. Bob Shiroli next month. Maybe keep those on file, put them somewhere, maybe on paper or your brain, and then we can pose those questions to B&G next month. Okay, next item on our agenda is our Director of Finance and Operations update. All right, Jean, I'm gonna make this a little bigger. All right, and I'm happy to be your quote-unquote Vanna.
Okay. So we'll be observing Memorial Day this coming weekend, so we're just giving a little shout out there. And so we have Bethany here to talk about a special education update. She has various areas to discuss in the special education. After she's done discussing that, I have some information on the transportation for special education and homeless. And Mr. Cruikshank is going to be trying to join us when we get to that portion online. If not, I will be presenting it all. And then we have the financial reports for FY24 revenues and expenses.
Ms. Spolansky, just let me know when you want to.
Will do. Thank you very much. You can go right on to the next slide. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm going to run through a bunch of information related to special education. I'll give an overview of some of our data within our department, some budget considerations for the upcoming budget process, an overview of in-district programming, and then an update on our tiered focused monitoring. Thank you. So here's an overview of our October 1 special education data for our students in special education. This is just a moment in time, so this is the October 1 data. You can see it's broken down by the placement type of students. So everything in blue are students who are within our district, and it's broken down by the amount of time that they spend within the regular education classroom. So full inclusion students are there for 80% or more of the time. Partial inclusion is between 40 and 80%. Sub-separate is more than 40%. So you can see the majority of our students in district are in full inclusion placements. And then in the orange, we have two groups of students who are not within the district. The small wedge is itinerant students, which means that those students are enrolled in other programs, maybe private schools. They could be homeschooled, and they come in just for services. And then we have 69 students who are in out-of-district placements, either in public or private placements. Here's an overview of our out-of-district enrollment over time. So you can see that over time we've had a significant shift, which now has remained stable for the past couple of years, where we have around 70 students out of district. This has them broken down again by placement, so you can see the number of students in public day placements. We have around 30, around 33 in private day, and then 6 in residential. In addition to those students, we also have 3 students who are at Recovery High School and 3 students who are tuitioned into our district from other districts. Those 2 groups of students don't show up in our October 1 reporting, just as students who are enrolled in other districts, if we were to tuition them, don't show up in the reporting either. So those are other groups that are represented within our student body. Thank you. So as our out-of-district enrollment has decreased over time, we have been able to maintain those students in district by increasing our capacity within our in-district program. So this shows how the trends in out-of-district enrollment relative to in-district staffing. And so over time, again, that out-of-district enrollment has decreased and has remained stable around 70. Our in-district staffing has gone from around just under 110 to in the low to mid 150s. And just to clarify, this staffing is only teacher level, Unit A level staff, so this does not include paraprofessionals. This is special education teachers, therapists, counselors, BCBAs, that level of staffing, which have supported our students who are within the district. So it's really difficult for us to quantify costs that haven't been actualized, but we know that as we've had fewer students going out of district, there's a cost savings there. And so it's taken us over time to see what that cost savings are. And so what I did here is I took our FY17 out of district enrollment and I applied our FY25 tuition rates to that so that we could get a sense of if we had continued at that same level that we had been at previously, what our out of district costs would be. And you can see based on this, and they'd be about $3.4 million higher than they are now. So it's been, a significant cost savings. Obviously, there are other factors at play that are not represented in this chart, circuit breaker reimbursement, the costs of some of the in-district programming that we have improved upon. But just in terms of tuition costs, the difference between our out-of-district enrollment in FY17, if we were to apply current rates, is $3.4 million. In terms of FY25 budget considerations, we have some changes in staffing that we're anticipating. We're anticipating an additional AIM classroom at Ayers, and this is just due to the enrollment within our program. A reduction of one SSP teacher and one language-based teacher at BMS, again, just due to enrollment within those programs. The addition of a certified occupational therapy assistant due to caseload demands within the occupational therapy department. We have some significantly higher tuition rates. We know that this year in FY24, we had a 14% OSD tuition rate. OSD is the governing body that sets the tuition rates for our out-of-district programs. And so this year we had really an unprecedented increase at 14%. And then for FY25, the anticipated increase is almost 5%. So that's a very, very significant increase over time, which I'll show you visually coming up. And then we also do anticipate a slight increase in our out-of-district enrollments. Like I said, we've been really steady around 70. I anticipate that might go up a little bit at the beginning of next year, and then I hope that it will level off after that. But I do anticipate a slight increase in that area. So in terms of the OSD tuition increase, this is just a visual for those who would like to see it over time. The increase in the OSD tuition rates from FY17 to FY23 averaged about 2% per year. And then all of a sudden we had this big jump up to 14%, and then again 4.6. So you can see over time the significant rate increase that happened very, very quickly in our OSD rates. And that's something that we just don't have any control over, that those rates are set, and then we are obligated to pay them for students who are out of district. So in terms of how that equates to actual tuition costs, here is a chart that shows, I just grabbed a handful of schools, most of which are in the Beverly area. St. Anne's is not in Beverly, but we do use that program frequently. And then I also did include Kevin O'Grady, KOG, which is not a private day, that's a public day, but I included that just so that you can see the rate increases in a program like Kevin O'Grady. And so what you can see in this chart is that the rate increase between FY17 and FY23 is about the same increase as FY23 to FY24. So it was a really, really significant sharp incline. So this just gives you a sense of how much we're talking about when we're talking about tuition costs. And these are per student per year costs for these programs. Okay, our circuit breaker reimbursement has increased. Just as a reminder, circuit breaker is a state special education reimbursement program that provides additional state funding for high-cost special education students. And the way that the formula works is that we get reimbursement of up to 75% of the per pupil costs, including transportation, that exceed a set threshold. Every year that threshold moves a little bit. So for our FY24 claim, which we'll make in July, the threshold is 51,721. So what that means is any costs above 51,721, we will get reimbursed at a rate of up to 75% for each student. And so we pay those costs up front, we submit our claim, and then we get the funds in the subsequent fiscal year. And so just to give you an idea of how this impacts the budget, in FY23, we received just over $3 million in circuit breaker reimbursement, and in FY24, we are receiving about 3.2 in circuit breaker reimbursement. I don't yet know for FY25 because we submit that claim in July, but I would anticipate that it would be an increase over what we received during FY24. Okay, so in terms of decision making, all of the decisions that take place regarding students and student placement all take place through the team process or at times through other collateral agencies. These are not decisions made by me alone. These are decisions made by teams of people who know the students really well, who have a lot of expertise in their own domains, and who come and work through a process of looking through data and considering, you know, all of the factors available to make the appropriate decisions for students. There's a lot of changes that happen within placements. Everything is, you know, kind of a snapshot in time in any given moment. So I meet weekly with the out-of-district team chairperson to review every potential change, every student who might need a change in placement, anybody who's in the referral process. We are keeping a very, very close eye on that process so that we are aware of and can anticipate any changes that might happen. And then in addition to that, we have a monthly meeting that I meet with Jean, I meet with Dana, the Director of Transportation, our out-of-district team chairperson, and special education office staff, as well as some office staff from the business office. And during that meeting, we scrutinize every change that has happened over the month in terms of changes of placements, changes in transportation, upcoming anticipated changes, any students we're tuitioning into the district, any changes at all. And we make sure that we are updating purchase orders, opening new purchase orders if we need to, so that we don't have any unanticipated expenses that we're not aware of, but also any unspent funds that we thought would be spent and then weren't. So we do that on a monthly basis, which provides safeguards within our budget. Okay, so just a quick review of our in-district programs. We have three main strands of in-district programming. Our language-based program, which runs from grades 2 through 12, is located at the Hannah School at the elementary level, and then BMS and BHS. And this program is for students with average to above average cognition with significant deficits in reading and writing. So again, there are lots of students who might, you know, struggle with reading and need some reading intervention, but we're looking at students who really have significant deficits in these areas. And then we have our Attain, Aim, Attain, Accomplish, Launch. It's all part of the same program, but different names at every level. And these programs at the elementary level, we have 4 classrooms at Cove, 3 at North Beverly, and then we will be opening 1 at Ayers. And then we have 4 classrooms at BMS, and we have currently 2 accomplished cohorts. We are anticipating opening a 3rd next year, and then 1 launch cohort. So it's a very large program. It's grades K through the age of 22. For students who are not on a graduation track, they can stay with us until they turn 22. And this is a program for students with autism, global cognitive, and global developmental delays. And then we have our Ladders 3 SSP program. Again, different names at different levels, but the same program. And this program is at Centerville, BMS, and BHS for grades K through 12. And this program meets the needs of students who struggle with social, emotional, and behavioral challenges. And I do want to give a shout out to the staff who work within our programs. We have extremely talented teachers and therapists and paras who work within these programs. There's always challenges when we're meeting the needs of complex kinds of profiles, and they do an absolutely fantastic job within our programs. We are anticipating a change in our preschool program. There are very clear regulatory requirements regarding the ratios that have to be maintained within preschool, within any kind of special education early childhood programs. And currently right now, the way that our program works is we have a part-time program that is a 4-day AM and then PM program. And we're having a lot of difficulty enrolling our afternoon classes just because, again, we're dealing with little ones who might still nap or, that type of a thing. And so because we're having trouble enrolling peers within the classroom, we're having difficulty maintaining the required ratios. And so, in surveying parents and in talking to people in the community, people are really looking for a longer day. Many people are looking for a longer day than just the morning. So we are looking to change the program from a 4-day half day to 5-day full day program that then would be a 2-day, a 3-day, or a 5-day option for students with special education needs and also for peers. And so we think that will help both in terms of our enrollment and our ratios within our regulatory requirements.
I would like to ask a question while
Yeah.
we're on this slide.
Sure.
Is there any option as within our elementary and even here for after school, an extended day in this program at all?
So we don't currently have that as an option. That's something we've talked about, but that's currently the way that the program is structured. That's not something that we have the option to do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Next slide. The other big change that is coming within our department, which will come in the fall, is that the state is adopting a new IEP form. So the IEP forms that we're currently using have been in place for, at least 20 years, I think more than that, with no changes really during that time. And so the state went through a project called the IEP Improvement Project, where they have made significant changes to the actual IEP forms themselves. And the key elements that are being changed are the format, so the length, the usability, the language. The forms are more focused on having a data-driven and student-centered process with a strengths-based approach. There's more of a focus on least restrictive environment. Transition planning is more directly embedded within the IEP as opposed to now where it's sort of like a separate document from the IEP. And then there's purposeful inclusion of student and family voice. So we have been engaged in ongoing training this year to prepare staff. We've done a 3-part training with some additional optional trainings, and then we will continue to offer training over the summer for people who would like to participate in that, which will be funded by the 274 grant, which was a one-time grant for implementation of the new IEP. And that will also fund creation of documents to support implementation of the new IEP, exemplar documents and such. So we'll be working on that this summer. So that will be an undertaking for next year. And then last but not least is our tiered focus monitoring process. So all districts go through a 6-year review cycle through the Department of Ed. That's 3 years, 3 years and 3 years of Group A and then Group B indicators. And so we currently just went through our Group B indicator monitoring process, which included a whole bunch of things, but at the top of the list, licensures, professional development, facilities, parent and community engagement, discipline and bullying, time and learning, and equal access. And so this is actually a 2-year process that we go through where we do a year of self-assessment, which we did last school year. And then, we gather data, we gather documents, we do a whole internal review process that then is reviewed by the Department of Ed. And then based on that internal review, that self-assessment, they come on site and they actually review our facilities, they interview staff, they interview parents, they talk to the CPAC, they gather information themselves. Sometimes they'll ask for additional documentation and that type of thing to just corroborate their findings. And then they issue a report that has findings on every indicator that they are looking at. And so we completed our on-site review in January 2024, and then we got our report, which showed that our district was in compliance with all of the indicators that they were looking at, which was fantastic news for the
She was
district.
going by that rather quickly. That's like really big news. It's akin to Jean having 5 audits in a years in a row of no findings is very rare. And so a lot of kudos to Bethany, to the special education administrators, the special education teachers and paras throughout the building, because I can't say enough how rare that is. That is a very rare occurrence. So congratulations, Bethany, and to the whole group and everyone that was involved in that process. And it is a very lengthy process. So
Thank you.
that's all.
I just want to say to poor Miss Emma there, Jean does have a really long run of no reports, of no findings in her report. So that's just getting thrown down right there. All right.
Okay.
Ms. Spolansky, do you have any more? Oh, yeah, the questions.
Any questions?
All right, yes, Ms. Coelho.
I don't know if this is maybe a question or more like a statement. It is F and F. Maybe it's not the meeting to mention this. Sorry, Lorinda. Maybe it is the meeting to mention this. Don't hate me. With some of the cost savings, I know we're in a rough situation right now, and we are talking about special ed programmings, teachers, and how amazing these special ed teachers are. But with the cost savings and all this, maybe we could reconsider 2 of these positions at the high school, like with the ladders in the Beacon program, with these special ed programs, because these special ed teachers that are being considered over there are very essential. I've seen these ladders and Beacon programs do amazing things for these teachers. I've seen the stuff Miss Blinderman does, and I've seen it firsthand with some of these kids, how some of them don't want to go to school in their freshman and sophomore year, and junior and senior year. These kids actually show up because of people like Miss Blinderman, because of people like Miss Fauerbach, who coach these kids and speak to these kids, and they show up because of this ladders program, because of this Beacon program. And without them, these kids don't have people to lean on.
Yeah, so I just
We
want
need these extra programs, we need these extra teachers, and I will sit here all day, all night, and I will advocate for these extra positions, because it starts in the elementary school and the middle school with, even at Centerville with my own kid, with teachers like Mr. Bouchard and paras like Mr. S, who have to deal with these kids when they're little too. And like that gentleman right there who had to deal with the other kids who are in high school now, who are fantastic and redirect these kids and help them at younger ages to get up. And when they skip that program in elementary school and middle school and have to deal with it in high school, these teachers and paras and special ed programs, they're essential. And that's all I wanted to say.
So just to clarify, there's no change to the ladders program at all being proposed for next year. The ladders program will remain as it is. So there's no changes to that. I just want to clarify that piece
And
of
I'm
it.
going to say, I think that's an incredible compliment, and it's on topic relative to what's in or not in the budget. We can talk about in 28 minutes, approximately, at the next meeting. Dr. Silva, yes.
On slide 8, when you calculated the cost savings,
Yes.
does that include also the increased staff?
No. So that is just looking at the tuition costs for the number of students who are out of district, if that number was the same as it was in FY17. So that's why I'm saying there are other factors that, the circuit breaker reimbursement would be impacted, our in-district costs that increased because of the fact that students weren't going out. All those things
So
would offset
if you
that.
if you had included the staff increase, the savings would have been
Would
less.
be less, correct.
Is that right?
That's
Okay.
correct. Yep, this is just looking at tuition costs, looking at numbers of students, and as they have decreased, what that means. And again, it doesn't mean that we have like an excess 3.4 million. It just means that those were costs that we didn't actualize had we maintained that level of
Yeah.
students out of
And
district.
that's why I brought up the point of the there is staffing.
Absolutely.
That was put into the.
100%, yep.
I'm looking,
Correct,
Mike,
correct.
But circuit breaker went up as well. So
That's
your
right.
reimbursement costs, so you got some of that money back that you spent on hiring more people, I imagine.
Correct, and circuit breaker also went up for just a variety of reasons. I mean, there were many years since I've been in this position that it was not funded at 75%. So now, over the past couple of years, it's been funded. When they say fully funded, that means 75%. And of course, then they added in over a 4-year period the transportation costs, which were not were not included before. So all those factors impact the bottom line for sure.
Dr. Churchill.
I just want to say I find this slide particularly intriguing in that in 2017 and 2018, when we were advocating for adding programs, and it was hard to articulate how that savings would be seen. Because it's hard to add and not, because it really was keeping kids in district rather than not all the kids came back, some aged out, but we had a hard time back then trying to discuss how we were going to explain where the savings were going to come from. So I think the historical look back over 8 years and understanding that what those incremental costs would have been had we had more students out of district was sort of and I don't know how many of you were here in 17, so those were the F&F, we were having those conversations back when we were talking about adding programs. And so I think that's a challenge. That's one of the reasons why this was pretty, telling to me.
And one more thing, since you brought it up, do these potential savings include transportation, or is it just tuition?
Just tuition,
So
just tuition
there's
costs.
something else you need to throw into it if you wanted to get the full.
Other
Correct,
savings.
correct.
All right, I'm looking around the table. Anybody else have any questions before I call on myself? I'm going to ask the same question I asked back in 17 when we were having those conversations, which is around, do you envision at this point in time there are any additional programs? What programs, if any, could we add in order to keep more children in district?
That's a fantastic question. I don't know that we necessarily need to add an additional program per se, but I think one of the things that we struggle with within our programs is just that we have, even within a program that has a specific profile that we're meeting, there's always students who are, a little bit different than that kind of average profile, and that can be tricky for us. So I don't know that we necessarily need a different program, but for example, students who have autism, who may be candidates for the AIM program, but also have therapeutic needs, who may be candidates for the SSP program, that type of situation gets tricky for us to program for. But again, we don't necessarily have a cohort that would be large enough for us to have a whole separate program. So it's more those kind of outlier kind of profiles that sometimes are tricky for us.
All right, let me maybe pose it a different way. If we're sending I forget where I am in the city. If we're looking next door, across the way there at the Kevin O'Grady School, and we say we send some number of children there, are there any programs there that we could have here? Could we pull any given child back from Kevin O'Grady or from one of those way more expensive schools?
Yep.
If we had the capability to service that child in-house?
Yep. So I would say at this exact time, I don't think that is the case. Again, we went through, most of the students who are in out-of-district placements are there because the level of need is such that it would be very, very impossible, sometimes just from an environmental standpoint, to be able to meet their needs in district. So it's not so much, I'll use Kevin O'Grady as a great example. There are some students there who are just extremely medically fragile, and there's really no way for us to create a similar environment. I mean, they have, a tremendous amount of nursing staff. They have a tremendous amount of equipment. We might have only, say we have 2 students who kind of fit that profile. Maybe one of them is in 2nd grade and one of them is in 10th grade. There's no way to make a cohort out of that. And in order to provide programming, it would really be A, cost prohibitive, and B, not maybe in the best interest of the child, because we don't want a child to be a cohort of one. So the out-of-district coordinator and I look really, really closely at any kind of situations where we could meet the needs in district, and we have, certainly brought different services in district to be able to meet more needs, like our teacher of the deaf, and we've got an AAC specialist, we have an AT specialist, so we've done all that in order to meet the needs of more complex cases in district, and I think we've done that really effectively. But I don't think that there are some situations where needs are best met through programs that specialize in those needs because of a bunch of factors.
Okay, I'm looking again. Yes, Mr. Manzo?
One more. Do we still have students in out-of-district placements there because of a unilateral placement by their parents, or have we sort of turned the tide on that battle?
That happens on occasion, that, parents might opt to place a child privately. But, we certainly have students that the district is making the determination to place if we need to do that. So, on occasion, there are cases like that. Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, I have another question. So I'm going to call on myself again. You mentioned you anticipate having a few more out-of-district placements. Are those due to move-ins, and where on that lovely chart of costs
Yeah.
are we out of districting to? Translation, how much money are we looking at? What's your anticipation?
Yep.
And why, I guess?
Yeah, great question. So I think it's a mixed bag. We have been alerted from other districts that we do have a few students who are moving into the district with high need who may already be in out of district placements, and then we assume those costs. We also, things right now in terms of placing students out of district are dramatically different than they were even 2 years ago. There are the process, it used to be that we would make referrals to a couple of programs, the students would get accepted, they would be placed within 2 weeks. Now we make referrals, sometimes it's a year, 2 years before we're looking at being able to place a student within an out-of-district program. So we have some students who have been in the referral process that we've been looking for placements and just plain and simply have not been able to locate them because of the current environment within the out-of-district placements. They just don't have availability like they did before. So we just have some that are in process that I know at some point will be placed, and so I'm anticipating that. In terms of where they will be placed, I honestly, I can't make a guess about that because, again, it used to be that we made referrals, kids were accepted, and we sent them there, and it's just not working that way now, and so we're having to look at programs that maybe we haven't used before and, look at things a little bit differently in that way. I will say that the difference between the public day and the private day now, as you can see from this chart, it's just not a big difference. And so there are obviously more expensive and less expensive programs, but whether they're public day or private day, most of them are all kind of, in the same, they've all increased quite a bit. So I wish I could anticipate where they will be placed.
All right, I have one more question, but I'm going to give everybody else an opportunity rather than piglet the floor. I'm looking. All right, I'll call on myself. Here's my last question. Can you speak, please, to why we start our language-based program at grade 2, or spinning that around? Why don't we try for an early intervention in KN1 with language?
Yeah, that again, great question. We certainly we have the ability to place students in grade 1 if we had a need for that. I think the thing that is tricky is that we are still providing, we're teaching kids how to read in kindergarten and grade 1, right? So a lot of times we're providing intervention, we're tracking progress on the intervention, and then we're using that data to inform our instruction. And so we want to make sure that we are not jumping right to a placement if the needs can be met through less restrictive models. And so it's rare that a student would be identified already in first grade as needing that level of support. If that happened, we could meet their needs within the program. We've done it before. It's not an issue. We just generally have found that, we want them to be given instruction in reading before we make a determination that instruction isn't going to be effective for them. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Mr. Copeland? Master Copeland. Congratulations.
Thank you. Got my master's degree this past weekend. Thank you. So for those students that you mentioned who are waiting to be placed, maybe for 1 or 2 years, what happens in the meantime?
Yep.
As far as I'm waiting.
It depends on the situation. So some students, we have started the process knowing that it'll be a lengthy process, and their needs can be met in the interim within our programs by maybe providing additional supports or having additional paraprofessional support, or looking at how to meet their needs in the meantime. Sometimes we make other arrangements. If their needs really can't be met and we're waiting on a placement and everybody involved agrees that their needs really can't safely be met in district, then we look at other options like providing some kind of interim services plan. It really depends on the student and the profile and the level of need, but we work with families to figure that out. And that's rare. I mean, most of the time we're able to keep our students in district while we look for an appropriate out-of-district placement. But it's just, it's the time horizon has just been really unpredictable lately, and so we're having to adjust to that. Yeah.
Okay, last call for Ms. Spolansky. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Same time next year. All right. Oh, is this your slide too, or is Jean, is this yours?
This is me.
Okay.
when we met earlier talking about special education, Linda asked that we bring a little information on the special education transportation aspect of it. So I have a little, some little information here, talking about FY24 year-to-date expenses is $1,123,696, and we have encumbered $279,751, which would be for the April, May, June time period that we have. So I'm anticipating our cost for this year is going to be $1,403,447. I just wanted to give a report on, to show how that compares to the last few years. In FY23, our transportation cost was $1,411,875, so it's a little bit less. But we, however, did receive circuit breaker reimbursement of $648,164 in FY24 for those expenses. So as Bethany talked about earlier about circuit breaker reimbursement, they just started bringing that on in from the FY21 year, and they phased it in. So the what we received in here was a percentage of what our costs were. So I'm going to say what our total costs were, but not all of them would be circuit breaker reimbursable eligible, because again, we have to base it on that $51,271 amount. In FY22, our transportation cost was $1,182,528, and we did receive in that year, from that year, we received $620,643. So what happened in there is that there was a lower rate, but a higher, now it comes in, they're reimbursing a larger amount or portion. So they had a phase-in schedule. And then FY21 transportation costs were $622,683. So that was a lower cost, but as you know, as we were coming out of the pandemic, we found that the costs were rising quite a bit for what we were getting charged. Also, that's when we were just coming out of the pandemic as far as how many people were being transported. The circuit breaker reimbursement we received on that was $117,858. And I believe the first year it was 25%. So again, everything has to base on that circuit breaker reimbursable amount. Then they added transportation, it was 25%, then 50, and then it's now, I think it's 75.
This claim will be 100.
100 when we do it this year. And I did ask Mr. Cruikshank, I thought he was going to be logging on, but he may not have been able to get to the program here. But we have approximately 53 students that are being transported is what he received to me. So when I was listening to Bethany give us her spiel, she was telling me how many students are out of district. So that's a number that I'll want to check with Mr. Cruikshank to make sure. However, the students that are in residential do not get transported. So I'm not sure if that number looks accurate to you.
Yeah, I think that is accurate because there are some students who might attend schools in Beverly and their parents choose to transport them. Or there might be other,
Okay.
arrangements. So I do think that's accurate.
All right, that's great news. And then the circuit breaker reimbursement goes to the school circuit breaker revolving fund. And it's used, we currently use it on special education tuitions. So if there's, when we're talking about budget offsets, I do the budget offset for circuit breaker for this year, has been just to tuition, special education tuition. It can only go towards special education costs, and it can't go towards salaries like that. It has to be for tuitions or.
It can only go toward costs that generate circuit breaker reimbursement. So tuition costs, transportation costs.
I have a question. So when we look at this number of $1.4 million for special education transportation, you mentioned the reimbursement above and beyond the 54 whatever that was on a previous slide. So is the computation that we take a child's tuition and their transportation combined, compared to the 54, and then we get some percentage of that, everything that was above the 54. So the first 54 is ours. And then you just said 100%. 100% of transportation and 75% of the tuition.
So what I meant by 100% is Jean was talking about the phase-in of transportation costs. So the first year that we were able to claim, we could only claim 25% of the transportation costs in our claim, and then we got 75% of that claim back. And then the next
now
year it
we
was
can
50,
claim 100.
then it was 70. So now we can claim 100.
But we're still only going to get 75, assuming
correct.
it's funded at 75.
Correct. And we only get transportation funding if it is fully funded at 75%. So if it came in lower than 75, we would not get transportation reimbursement.
Any transportation.
Correct.
So this entire 1.4 is on us.
Correct.
I have to go home now. Anybody else have any questions? Okay.
Okay, the next item I have is the homeless transportation, so talking about the same thing. So our year-to-date expenses is $241,531 as of the last warrant that we paid. We still have $102,039 encumbered with an estimated cost of $343,570. What I want to mention to you is, at this point, we're looking at all of our encumbrances to make sure that they're all going to come through. So we do believe that that is what we're going to be getting, so we may not have paid April, May, and June bills, and therefore. But right now, we're looking at all of our encumbrances to make sure that what we have encumbered is actually going to happen before the end of the fiscal year on June 30th. Excuse me. FY '23 tuition cost was $583,789 for the homeless population. I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see that, and Dana did tell me that the number of students that we're transporting in and out of the city has reduced this year, so that's good. Also, I didn't have anything budgeted more than what our costs are, so our costs are very close to what this is. And that where our reimbursement we received was $244,438. And my last line on the sentence here does tell you that homeless transportation reimbursement goes to the city's general fund. So when the guidelines for the circuit breaker, that goes into a circuit breaker revolving, but it's by regulation that it has to go to the city's general fund. And they take that into consideration when they give us our budget. They forecast what and as you can see, in the previous year, we've only received $80,813, and the year before, $57,830 for reimbursement. And that's something that's just recently also been, they're trying to put some more money towards that in the state budget. And our costs went from, $583, it was $428, and then $248. So that's all I have to talk about for transportation and special education, and then we have our revenues and our expenditure report. And as usual, coming up to the end of the meeting. So the school revenue report that you brought up here, everything is coming in pretty much as we anticipated. We're still waiting for 2 more months of school choice payments coming in. We're still waiting for the final circuit breaker revenue of $799, $752. Special education tuition, so Bethany did talk about bringing some children into our schools for their programs. We do have $5,933 that would be forthcoming. Our non-resident tuition service funds, those funds come in the spring for the next fiscal year. So when Andrea did this report for us, this $88,000 is what we actually took in last spring for this current year, and then she won't be reporting what she's taken in this spring until next year for what we forecasted. The scholarship fund and the education fund is where residents can donate on their taxes for the school's use, and so we've received $540 this fiscal year for the scholarship fund and $495 for the education fund. Transportation revolving, we have outstanding $3,818. Not sure if who those students are, but we're still trying to collect on them. The building rentals, that is usually it's the YMCA and the churches that bring that in. That number is what we are anticipating based on what we budgeted, but I do believe that that number's going to come in a little bit higher. So when the June report's done, you'll see that in that third column, the plus and minus, we'll see a plus amount. But we can't forecast that because what we receive in for the students on the YMCA is based on enrollment, and that's how it's set up in our RFP that we have with them. The preschool revolving, they pay monthly, and so that's something that we're still forecasting, and Andrea keeps track of that, and she did double-check that number for me. And the athletics, they're still looking to be collecting $9,695 on students that are played in the sports this year. So we're still looking for those funding, but there's nothing that I'm concerned about if we don't get that funding in the fees down at the bottom, that we don't have the amount of money in the revolving account to cover the costs that we were anticipating. Excuse me. The next thing I have is my year-to-date budget report. So this report was ran on May 17th, so when this report was run, this was run through a certain payroll. We figured the percentages based on where we are in the fiscal year, and there's many areas that it's, biweekly payrolls would be one certain percentage, 44 pay periods would be a different thing when we're talking salary accounts. One thing I would like to point out is I have not moved any funding to the custodian revolving account. So the building rental revolving account, when we build our budget, is based on salaries. So you'll see some negative amounts. So on page 3, the third line, second line, right now it shows just a negative $74.45 when we still have some more payrolls. So therefore, what we're having here is that I'm not transferring it to the building rental revolving account until the end of the fiscal year to see if we, page 3.
I was on page 3, but you said B and G. You tricked me.
No, custodian.
So I said building and rental, which threw you off, yes. So what happens is when we build the budget, we say so much of their salary, 10,000, 20,000, depending upon which school, is going to be covered by the buildings and grounds revolving account. But if we have surplus in another line, like right now, we have a $2,000 in the overtime line, we'll offset those. So I won't do that transfer till the end. And then if we don't need to do the transfer, then that would, make our balances in our revolving accounts okay for the expenditures we're planning on the next year. Looking at SP 860 is always 3 minutes. SP 860, I think it's on page 36, you're probably already there before me. Nope. 37. Is one of those, it's the end of page 37 going into 38. That's an area that we always, I always say to you each month I'm looking at. Currently on the second line, the collaborative, there's an encumbrance that wasn't canceled by the end of the day on 5/17 that when I ran this report. So it does show a negative, but that negative is coming out of the encumbrance. So we're looking that how we plan to spend our SP 860 tuition money out of the appropriation budget is spot on. We did have to charge some to our circuit breaker revolving account. Oh, sorry. That's okay. We had to spend some to our circuit breaker revolving account. We're looking at that, as Bethany explained. We have a meeting every month that we talk about this, and we were forecasting that we may have to use upwards of 40 to 50% of the current year circuit breaker. We're hoping that's going to come in less. So if we can try to carry over all of the circuit breaker, which is what the guidance says to try, we'll go there. The OT 275 is the other account that I'm always looking for, and which is our substitute line And right now, I think I put enough money in there to cover the cost for the remainder of the year. That's on page 33. And just some of our substitutes in the long-term substitute line are people that are paid on the teacher scale because they're in for a 1 year. So there's still 7 more payrolls to hit. So sometimes when people look at this saying we're getting near the closer to the end of the year, some people are paid on the 26 payrolls per year. If anybody has any questions on them, they can always give me a call.
I am looking quickly around the room. Does anybody have any blaring concerns about either the revenue or the expense report that they want to put on the table for Ms. Sherburne to look into? Seeing none. Oh, yeah, Dr. Silva, that was really after the bell, but we'll accept it. Mike?
I do see some areas that are 20, like below 30%, that like the student activity, and there's some overtime custodial accounts that are pretty large. Can you just add a little bit
So
of?
are you asking, they're at 20%?
They're at 20%.
They're at 20%. So some of the areas, so we, on the custodial overtimes, we just go in with a number, not knowing what people are going to do, but we transfer, it just like I did the facility utilities. Bob can use that money for other B and G overtime.
Okay.
So it gets all kind of shuffled. It's not, we can't project what it's going to be exact. So that's one area that, some of them have it, and maybe they're not having as many activities that required a custodial overtime. Plus, we were trying to get the overtime to, what we actually need.
Yeah.
So that's an area, and Bob and I reviewed this year, and when we built FY '25s, we put more in the buildings and grounds overtime line that he's got to cover for summer work too. So there.
All right.
Was there another thing
That
other
makes-
than?
No, that's fine.
All right, last look around the room. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. All those in favor, non-debatable. 6-0, 7:32.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for your patience. We stack our meetings, so sometimes we run just a few minutes over, so appreciate your patience. As we get started, I want to welcome everyone to the Beverly School Committee. This is our Committee of the Whole meeting. Today is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. We do have a hybrid option going this evening, so we have a remote meeting platform that is provided at no cost to our district, and we're using that for BevCam to stream us as well as broadcast us. We appreciate that. You can catch us on channel 66 or high def 1073. Thank you, BevCam. Their YouTube channel is also great. You can also watch our meetings in double time the next day if you wish. Beginning on June 16th, 2021, with chapters 20 of the Acts of 2021, which were twice extended and now further extended until March 31st, 2025, local governments were granted provisions to, among other things, hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2025. This suspends the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present and asks us to use technical methods to allow for safe public access. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participant of the members, although when these acts expire, the chair and the quorum will physically be present. Tonight, again, is a committee of the whole meeting, which means we do not have an opportunity for the public to address the body. If you do want to have that opportunity, the next chance will be at our regular school committee meeting on June 12th. You would email residentvoice@beverlyschools.org to sign up to get the link, or you can come here in person. We do ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes and provide your name and address for the record. Joining us today are members of the school committee, various members of the district administration and leadership teams. As well, I will call a roll call attendance since we have some of our principals participating remotely this evening. However, the entire committee is here in person. Please remember, anyone that's participating on the remote platform, there are the alternate streaming options, but we do ask that if you are on our remote platform tonight, you remain on mute. Any audio or video that you supply on this platform does become part of the meeting record. So now let me call the roll. Mayor Cahill.
Here.
Ms. Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
Dr. Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza.
Here.
Ms. Karen Robinson.
Here.
Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Ms. Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
And I'm Rachel Abel. We are also joined by our superintendent, Sue Chirochak.
Here.
Our assistant superintendent, Dorothy Flaherty. Here. Our director of opportunity access and equity, Dr. Andre Morgan. For a short time longer, our Finance and Operations Director, Jean Sherburne.
Here.
And our newly hired Director of Finance that will soon be joining us, Emma Puglisi. Your title's getting too long, Ms. Brown. Erin Brown, our Director of Information and Human Resources. And our Director of Special Education and Pupil Personnel, Bethany Splansky. Here. Thank you. In the room for principals, we have our middle school principal, Lisa Oliver. Here. Our high school principal, Mark Thomas. Here. And I think, is that Ryan Wood? Yes, our athletic director, thank you. Joining us online, we have Principal Gabrielle Montevecchi.
Here.
Principal Megan Hart.
Here.
I think I saw Principal Julie Smith.
Here.
And Principal Amy Blanchard.
Here.
Very well. It concludes our roll call this evening, unless I missed anyone hiding amongst all of our wonderful students and families who are joining us this evening. We will jump right into our agenda, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to ask our birthday girl and longest-serving school committee member, Ms. Visnick, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then I kindly ask Mr. Wood and Dr. Chirochak if you would do the honors of doing our special recognitions this evening. And Mr. Thomas. Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Good evening. Tonight we'd like to recognize our Winter All-Stars. We're proud of everything they do in competition and in the classroom and around our school community. They're great as far as setting a good example for all our students.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I'm going to start with our boys basketball team. Jacob Class, NEC All-Conference and Salem News All-Star. Noe Diaz, NEC All-Star and Salem News All-Star. Danny Pierce, NEC All-Star. And then on to girls basketball, Jules Stevenson, NEC All-Conference and Salem News All-Star. Molly Potter, NEC All-Star and Salem News All-Star. And then Clara Castro, NEC All-Star. On to gymnastics, Carly Morin, NEC All-Star, Salem News All-Star, and Boston Herald All-Scholastic. Great job. Then on to boys ice hockey, we have Ethan Height, NEC All-Star, and Salem News All-Star. Then on to girls ice hockey, we have Morgan Linsky, NEC All-Star, Salem News All-Star. Girls ice hockey again, Meredith Johnston, Salem News All-Star. On to boys indoor track, we have Leo Sheriff, NEC All-Conference and Salem News All-Star. Ray Quietek, NEC All-Conference and Salem News All-Star. Ryan Whiting, NEC All-Conference and Salem News All-Star. Evan Wong, NEC All-Star. And Riley McGoldrick, NEC All-Star. Congrats. On to girls indoor track, Adeline Abel, NEC All-Conference. Congrats. Allison Prass, NEC All-Conference and Salem News All-Star. Congrats. Lily Judge, NEC All-Conference. Grace Williams, NEC All-Conference and Salem News All-Star. Congrats. Tara McNeil, NEC All-Conference. Callie Penjwani, NEC All-Conference. Grace Galbraith, NEC All-Star. Vanessa Weidenhold, NEC All-Star. And Svetlana Pisecki, NEC All-Star. On to swim and diving, Carly Atwood, NEC All-Conference. Congrats. Zach De Silva Grandin, NEC All-Conference and Salem News All-Star. Congrats. And Henry Zednik, NEC All-Star. On to wrestling. Cooper Lang, NEC All Conference. Joe Baker, NEC All Conference and Salem News All Star. Braden McNeil, NEC All Conference. Braden Pouliot, NEC All Star. Tristan Gold, NEC All Star. Casey Nako, NEC All Star, Salem News All Star. Gino Sakari, NEC All Star and Salem News All Star. And Jack Constantine, NEC All Star. And that concludes our All Stars for the winter season of 2024. Thank you, everyone.
Just some small accomplishments we got to recognize here. First, we'd like to recognize our salutatorian for the class of 2024, Mia Bellotti. And our valedictorian for the class of 2024, Jenna Schweitzer.
Congratulations, everyone. What an honor to have you in our presence this evening. I would like to call for a 10-minute recess so that we can congratulate the students and their families.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, we will be in recess. Thank you. Thank you so much, and what a wonderful visit we had with our student athletes and our scholars. Always appreciate evenings when we are blessed to have all of those people in attendance. We're going to move right along on our agenda this evening. The next item is the approval of our meeting records from the April 4th, 2024 Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Are there any edits or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor? 7-0. And now we will move to the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. I have two different items on the microphone. Two items on the agenda, both voting items. So the first would be the FY25 budget, school committee budget for submittal to the mayor and city council. And so just as a reminder, after I presented at the public hearing, and right now the draft budget proposal that is in front of you is for $76,717,064. So.
Okay, committee, we will start with a motion to approve the recommended budget of $76,717,064.
Second.
I made the motion, I guess. Mayor Cahill, you'll be the second. Great. And now is an opportunity for discussion. I would actually like to right off the bat start with an amendment. And my main motion amendment would be for an additional $1.3 million to request for line item OT 118-61189, which is our reserve for negotiation lines. And if I am granted a second for this amendment, I would then like to ask your indulgence for a moment to explain my reasoning.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. I first want to express my deepest gratitude to Dr. Chirocek, the cabinet, and the instructional and building leaders who worked so hard on this budget, and to a position it meets our student needs in a way that lives within our means here in Beverly and is faithful to our vision and our district goals. It is very thoughtful, and it is a deliberate request that I have confidence that Dr. Chirocek and our building principals will be watching enrollments all summer, as well as our programs. And that this year we may see higher than usual move-ins or move-outs throughout the summer, and our priorities may shift. So I have the utmost confidence in our leadership. Which is to say, now that I'm on my 5th term here in the school committee, and this is my 9th budget cycle, I can truly appreciate the intense scrutiny that has gone into this budget, the reflection, and the efficiencies that have been employed for this level service budget recommendation, including the use of some revolving fund balances, which historically we wouldn't have wanted to touch right out of the gate. And while also being mindful of our ultimate responsibilities to our young learners and to the needs that they are still expressing to us. I've reviewed all of the presentations that Dr. Chirocek has given us from November until now and listened intently to the multiple voices that came to the microphone during our public hearing. I have grown more and more resolute in the role of the school committee, and we are here this evening to recommend a budget that best serves our students and our community. An area where I feel the budget falls short is in the reserve for negotiations, since many of us can acknowledge from the testimonies we heard here 2 weeks ago and from the data we are seeing from other communities that we need to make an adjustment during this cycle of collective bargaining with units A, B, and C. So therefore, my humble request is that the committee increase the item for negotiations through tonight's vote to help reflect an increment by which a fair, affordable, and appropriate proposal may be born. Based on our home rule charter, I understand that tonight is the committee's one opportunity, and that by making our request now, despite the unknowns, we are using our one chance. And my hope is that as we present our needs to the City Council for their deliberation in the next few weeks, this will be in front of them. It will be June 11th when Dr. Chirocek presents the budget on our behalf. I do plan to attend that evening. And that is the chance for counselors to ask their questions. So tonight, I believe that we are setting a transparent budget request that outlines our anticipated needs for FY25, which includes settling a fair contract this summer. And as a community, we have many competing priorities that are facing our elected officials and our taxpayers. But we, as school committee members, must be the advocates for our schools. And in my estimation, based on the analysis that we've done thus far, this is what our committee needs to do. I do recognize, however, this creates an additional burden this year where the city budget, due to Chapter 70 and local aid falling short of expectations and our ESSER funding having been tapered off, it's a pretty serious ask. But I would ask that you vote in favor of my amendment to add $1.3 million to OT 118-61189, our reserve for negotiations tonight. Ms. Bisnick?
I don't know how to say what I want to say. I want to ask if we can go into executive session so I can ask you a question that would be detrimental to negotiations.
Unfortunately, we've posted our executive session at the end with a not to return, so that's not an option. I know, it's a tricky one, like open meeting law and executive session, all that, but. Okay, Ms.
After she's done.
No, I thought we could, in the middle of a meeting, do a sidebar. No?
It would, yeah, we didn't post it as such.
Right.
I think it would have had to have been posted as such. Thank you, Ms. Sherburne.
Okay. Why don't you have a think on that question, and I'll call on Ms. Coelho? Okay.
All right, I don't know. I'm not as seasoned as you, Miss Abel, so I'm coming in this raw, and I don't know how to phrase mine with the budget. I don't know how to ask for certain funding to be added to this as well, or have Mayor Cahill to address this either. I, in F&F, had come forward when Miss Bethany Spolansky was talking about cost savings with special education programs and asked for consideration to be made with the Ladders and Beacon program, and I was told that there was no change to the Ladders program for next year, but I did mention that it was Ladders and Beacon that I was talking about, and I did go back in to the revised draft budget, and there is a change to -1 teacher to the Beacon program at the high school, and I feel that that would be a detrimental change to the amount of children who do rely on that program and that teacher, as I have several parents who have emailed me about their children, who have said that their children would not have returned to school this year if it weren't for those teachers in the Beacon program this school year and last school year. And I would like reconsideration for the decrease of that teacher, and I would like to reconsider budget being added for that teacher.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Coelho. So right now on the table, we have a request for an amendment to the main motion, which is for the reserve for negotiation line. If you did want to make any other motions, we need to complete this amendment motion first. So we'll continue to talk about my amendment that I've put forward. Is there someone that wants to speak to adding to the reserve to negotiations line? Mayor Cahill.
Okay. I want to speak to your amendment proposal, but I was going to ask whether Dr. Trochik and Mr. Thomas, because I asked a similar question to Mr. Thomas, and I thought that the answer in the plan that the high school has is a good one and a strong one. But you're saying that's out of order right now.
It's a little out of order, and I let Ms. Coelho finish, but we should finish with the amendment first, and then we can have discussions about other elements of the budget before we have the vote on the main motion.
Do you need a second for your amendment?
I will second.
I believe I already received a second from Karen Robinson.
Yep.
Thank you. Yep, so we're on the topic of the amendment to the main motion. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranco.
Great. So I'm hoping my question maybe addresses some of my colleagues' concern. I'm wondering whether this amendment allows us to then consider those positions that we're talking about, or if it's removed from that and it's simply to ask for the access to the reserves.
Let's handle this motion that is for the reserve to negotiations line only, and then we can entertain any other amendments that wish to be entertained before going back to the main motion.
Yeah, I think it's hard to know how this impacts overall, that particular number. Do you want to say more about that number that you're asking about?
Sure. So the reserve for negotiations, each time that Dr. Chirocek presents her slide, she lets us know what a COLA is, what steps and columns are, and what the percentages are. And so based on what we already had in that number, and based on our initial conversations with the units A and C, I feel that we need to make City Council, the mayor and City Council aware that this is an area where this budget falls short of our actual needs in our district. And that was the number based on the data and the analysis that I had done.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Cahill.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'd like to make a further amendment. This is great because we clearly are all carefully following the open meeting law, because none of us have talked to each other, which is as it needs to be. And I would actually like to further amend to increase the number from 1.3 additional to 1.5 million in the reserve line. So it's an additional.
I will withdraw my amendment if you'd wish to make a new amendment for 1.5 million.
Second.
I mean, a further is in order.
We can do a further.
A further is in order, but
But it would
and
be
we can
applied
do it
to the
either way.
same line item, OT 1186189.
Same line item, same purpose, right?
Okay, so these are going to be nested amendments. I hope the Salem News doesn't catch us out of order here. So there's an amendment to the amendment that has been proposed, and did I hear Ms. Robinson second that? Okay, so second amendment to the amendment to the main motion is Mayor Cahill and Karen Robinson, 1.5 million to OT 1186189, reserve for negotiations, okay?
And if I could share a couple of thoughts. But I can wait on that.
I was just going to say procedurally, then we're going to have to vote on that and then come back to the big amendment, right?
To the, yes.
Okay.
So do we want to discuss this, or do we just want to vote to raise the number to 1.5 and then have the discussion under the umbrella of?
If people are of a like mind to approve it, I'm happy to talk about it after.
And this is only on the amendments, it's not on the main motion, so you can change your mind if you don't like what you hear. Okay, so the motion is to change 1.3 to 1.5. All those in favor? Okay, we have 7-0 on that. So now the main amendment is 1.5 million to the OT 1186189, reserved for negotiations. Mayor Cahill.
Thank you, Madam President. So I just want to talk through a little bit of how we're landing here. I want to remind us all that the proposed budget represented a $4.1 million increase in next year's school budget over this year's. This will represent a 4.1 and 1, 5.6, just about, over this current year's budget. The city portion of that was, well, until we vote this, is 3.6 million in new city dollars, which we went back 30 years, and it's the largest single-year city taxpayer increase to the schools in at least 30 years and probably in history. That was 3.6. Now we're talking about 5.1 in new city taxpayer dollars to the schools. I think that's important for all of us to understand, because this doesn't just come out of nowhere, right? The reason that I brought this forward is we spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks, Mr. Ailes, Mr. Ciani, we spent time with the superintendent and her team, trying to really get our arms around just what is necessary to ensure that our educators understand, realize, agree that we as a school committee, we as a community believe in them, believe that this is appropriate and warranted and needed. And, you know, I would say that we've all done outstanding good faith work throughout many months. The sharing that was done in the public hearing mattered. Our recognition that we need to move significantly, that we need to move in a really what's the right term? It's a real shift that we need. And at the same time, this will have impacts elsewhere financially for the community. It's taken us a lot to get to here. I believe that we have a plan to make this work financially for the community. The city council, I have to mention, the city council is the appropriating authority. Will have their part in this for sure. They'll have their due diligence to do, and they'll have their concerns with how we will make this fit. It's our goal, intent, and hope that this is going to be what it takes to get everybody to the place where we all can agree on our valuing of you and our valuing of the work you do with our kids. And I say you because I know some of you folks sitting here in front of us are representing our educators, and I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate everybody who's not here, but, you know, are doing the great work day in and day out. You know, a couple of the ways that we are looking at handling this will be, one, we will need to make some changes and decreases to the road and sidewalk line item. We believe we can do something in the near term with that, with some available free cash, but that's not something we can rely on year in and year out. Nonetheless, you know, this is warranted. This is needed. The other thing that we are looking to do, and again, the city council will have their place in all this conversation and these decisions. Since Proposition 2.5 went into place, it's been 40 some odd years. Every year in those 40 some odd years, except 2 years, the city has gone to the legally allowed levy limit in raising taxes. Those 2 years we didn't were just the last couple of years. And it was it was modest, it was very intentional, because the property values since COVID of commercial properties have flatlined and the property values of residential properties have soared stratospherically. And so we felt it was really important to be able to leave some dollars in the pockets of our residents, our property taxpayers. The time is coming for us to kind of bring that up to speed, to kind of recapture that money that's been left on the table the last couple of years. What we're going to propose is doing that over the next 2 budget cycles. It's a total of about $1.3 million that has not been, that we are beneath the limit, the levy limit. And I think it was important that we did it at the time. I think it's helped taxpayers, and I think now's the time we'll need to recapture that. So I just want you to understand a couple of places that we're going to definitely look to make this happen. And as I said, I feel this is the right thing to do. I feel good about our doing it. I'm really sincerely hope that this gets us, to where we all need to be. We do greatly value our educators. Every time I'm in schools, I'm reassured, impressed, and thankful, and I know that we all feel the same way. So That's probably enough out of me tonight. I'm appreciative of everybody's time to date, and let's see good things going forward.
So we're discussing the amendment, which is for 1.5 added to the line item for OT 118-61189 reserved for negotiations. Are there any further conversations related to the amendment before we take a vote on this amendment? Okay, are we ready to vote? The vote is not on the main motion, but just on the amendment to add 1.5 to the line item that I keep repeating. All those in favor? 7-0. Okay, and we're now returning back to the main motion, which is the number Dr. Churchick has on the screen, plus $1.5 million. So this is our main budget motion. Ms. Visnick?
Did we just vote twice on the?
No, the 1.5 was rolled into my amendment, which is then rolled into the main. So
Understood.
we're back
I
at the
think-
top level. Yeah.
Sorry, I keep forgetting. 78,218,648.
Okay, so our main motion is for a school committee recommended budget to go to the mayor and then to our city councilors of $78,218,648. Main motion, so Ms. Visnick.
I too came prepared to ask for consideration of actually more than one amendment, smaller amendments. I am going to read a prepared statement. I wish to bring forward a series of amendments to the budget for consideration. Before I begin, I wish to make it very clear that I'm grateful to the administration for their work on this budget. I appreciate the process by which we have collectively gotten to this point. Most notably, the items I identified as my priorities for the budget are in fact in this budget. And to that extent, it may seem contradictory for me to have any amendments. I wish to explicitly acknowledge that, and I wish to speak to it. I believe it is my role to be a representative to my constituents relative to school-related items. It is also the case that I may have my own beliefs on a given item, and most of you have heard me say on multiple occasions, excuse me, I strive to vote for what is best for children. It is also the case that the schools are just one piece of our overall community. And given that perspective, I understand that I should be at least somewhat aware and mindful of the larger overall community. My role on financial forecasting, as well as my attendance at many of the city council meetings, enables me to say with confidence, I'm aware of the fact that our schools are but one part of our municipality, which has many interrelated, interdependent, and complex needs. All of that said, we heard from a very large number of members in our community at our last meeting. My inbox is filled with even more feedback. I've taken the time to meet with a number of individuals with the aim of best understanding their concerns so that I may best attempt to fulfill my role as our representative in our representative democracy. As such, I bring forward a number of amendments to the proposed budget for the committee's consideration. First and foremost, as Ms. Coelho has already alluded to, and the mayor made mention of, I would like to propose that we add back into the budget both the REACH and the Beacon positions. These positions help our most vulnerable. Chronic absenteeism is a problem much wider than the city of Beverly. Our committee has discussed this problem on multiple occasions, and these positions are helping children who might otherwise be lost. Their needs are high. Outside services are scarce. We have these services now, and we are serving children. As such, I'm requesting that we keep these positions in order to continue serving the set of our most vulnerable children. That is my motion.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table to amend the main motion to include the positions for REACH and Beacon.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. Discussion or comment? Mayor Cahill.
May I ask Dr. Trochik and the appropriate principals to have a say at this, because I found your comments on these positions persuasive and very helpful.
So I'll start, and Mark, if you want to join me, I think, I understand the concerns. I want to be very clear. We are not eliminating the REACH or the Beacon programs. They will remain intact. They will be part of the high school. They will still continue to provide the services to students as they re-enter from whatever reason just let me finish and then. Nope. So I think one of the reasons that I have Mark up here, I don't know if people are aware, but Mark was the actual architect of the Beacon program. He originated the idea, and is now as principal of the high school, along with Mrs. Oliver. I've met with both of them, so I did not just indiscriminately decide which positions that should be eliminated. It was a lot of internal meetings. There was a lot of input from leadership, and I was assured by both of them that the services could continue based upon the staffing needs that they have and what they think would go. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark and let him just, if you want to just say a word about the Beacon program.
And I'm going to give some information that some people already know, but the Beacon program is a non-special ed program that's set up to be a soft landing for students coming in from prolonged absences. That could be a psychiatric hospitalization, a medical absence, a prolonged medical absence. And the thought is to not just send students back into the classroom, but enable them to come in, get some solid footing, kind of get going with their academics while getting social emotional support as they reintegrate back into the school. The usual duration is we look to have it about 2 weeks. Some are a little longer, some a little shorter, but we use 2 weeks as our kind of goal to have a student back up and running and back into their classes. Now, some students vary a little bit. Every case is individualized, but the support itself, the program itself, has been without question successful. We're really happy with the results we have. We have some really hardworking people that have really integrated well with our teaching staff, worked really hard to bridge those academic needs along with the social emotional support of the adjustment counselor in there. Up until 2 years ago, last year, we had a paraprofessional and a school adjustment counselor. We had the fortune of being able to add a teacher. The current teacher in there has done a wonderful job. This is not about the job that's being done, but there were some tough decisions that needed to be made here. And when we're talking about student-facing and trying to determine where we can trim back when we need to based on enrollment and the current landscape, this was a place where, along with many other subjects, almost all major subject areas, we cut back on. This was an area that we identified, and we think we can keep a level of support that's adequate for our students with an adjustment counselor that remains. That's never been in question, and a paraprofessional doing the academic end. That's the goal right now.
And
Thanks,
just
Ms. Robinson.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, so what does it look like now from what you're proposing?
Yep. So it would go from what the current status right now is an adjustment counselor and a full-time teacher, and we would revert back to what we had prior to having a teacher in there, which is an adjustment counselor and a full-time paraprofessional.
Thank you.
Okay, just as a reminder, this is on the amendment that's on the table. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
So I appreciate the clarification and I also appreciate the amendment. I'm wondering if there are going to be things that you feel would be different in terms of having a paraprofessional versus a teacher. Like, how might the student experience be different in this regard?
It's a great question. The teacher in there right now is not carrying any kind of course load. They're completely dedicated to the program, as would be the paraprofessional. There might be some differences in kind of contractually what a paraprofessional has on their contract versus a teacher, that type of thing. But as far as the day-to-day, the collaboration with teachers, the collaboration with our students, that would, I would say, remain unchanged. The thing I would say is a paraprofessional is not necessarily a licensed teacher. Some are not. But to be in that teaching position, our current teacher is a licensed teacher.
Thank you.
See Ms. Visnick, Ms. Coelho, and then I'm going to call on myself.
Mr. Thomas, thank you. I wish to maybe rephrase Dr. Mackenzie DeFrance's question in this way. Can you describe why you changed from a para to a teacher? What drove that decision? And what changes did you see with a different person in that position? And then why do you think we can go back?
So the change from a paraprofessional to a teacher, going back, that was prior to me being in this role as an assistant principal. I was notified we were getting a teacher in there, and I said, all right, that's great. So I wasn't privy to those discussions at that time. My thought about going from teacher to paraprofessional, I'm going to be quite honest. The caliber of person is really the biggest piece of this, and I've seen it where somebody's skill set did not quite fit what needs to happen with the collaboration with teachers and with students, and kind of that balancing act that goes on. And so I've seen the program struggle with some growing pains as a result. We've been fortunate enough to have a person that's done a really nice job as a teacher in that program. And title aside, that person has really been someone who's built that program and really worked with the adjustment counselor in the program to really get that going in a good direction. And it's those organizational skills, being able to collaborate with the teachers, being, for lack of a better term, a jack of all trades. They're really working all different subjects with a lot of different kids. So being able to multitask in the moment and really kind of act as that advocate in some ways, as a liaison between the teacher and the student, really work that end with building that confidence back up for students. So as far as that end, the skill set to me is really a big part of that. There's pieces that have really come together with that combination this year, as I think Ms. Coelho alluded to, from hearing from different parents and different families, and it's been a really nice fit this year. So
Thank you,
I hope that
Mr.
answered
Thomas.
your question.
We're going to call on Ms. Coelho, and then I have a brief remark, and then Mayor Cahill is asked to speak.
So as you just said, the program's working fine the way it is. It's like a well-oiled machine. Why throw a wrench in and change it? So next year, you might mess up the kids that are in sophomore, junior, and senior year that are going to move up to the next years. Freshmen, sophomore, and juniors that are moving up, they're going to be dysregulated next year. Why change the program when it doesn't need to be changed? It works fine right now. All those kids that are in that program love that program. Those teachers, that teacher and that para, they're not just a teacher and a para. They're a parent to talk to. They're a therapist. They're a pillow to cry on when that kid is having a bad day. When that kid leaves to go to a classroom, to go to wellness, to go to lunch, and they're dysregulated because something jacked their day, they run to that classroom and they cry on that teacher's shoulder. They cry to that paraprofessional, and that's what they do. That person in that classroom is their wonder pet. Why take them away from that? That is their person. That is their Mr. Drake over there from Centerville. That is their Mr. B. That is their person. at the high school.
So,
You know,
so
that is
they're
their,
at-
why take them away and dysregulate them? Why break up that program? That is that program that is there for them. I don't think we should separate it. We need to keep that teacher and that pair together for that program to work.
So these are all hard decisions. I'm losing a number of
And
positions.
if you break up that beacon program, it's the same thing. You're going to break it up and dysregulate a whole group of kids.
Thank you, Ms.
So
Quayle, and
these-
thank you, Mr. Thomas. Just in the interest of time, we have, I think, a lot more amendments perhaps, but I just wanted to interject real quickly. I think most of us, all of us, took to heart what we heard here 2 weeks ago and what we've continued to hear. But we've hired Dr. Chirocek as our operational leader, and we know it's never her goal or our goal to have to cut positions. FY25 requires us to reprioritize how we staff the buildings, and I think the school committee really should leave that to our hired leadership team. I appreciate the amendment. I value these programs as well, and I think it's important that we serve all of our students. However, reduction in force is always our last resort. And I think we all are aware what's happening in districts across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts right now. In our last few meetings, Dr. Churchak has really explained how difficult these decisions have been and how we have put so much thought into how we can manage them through attrition. So you know, hopefully we see these fabulous educators in different roles. We're talking about roles, not people. And really, I think that we should leave it to Dr. Churchak and our very capable building leadership to assist us in making the actual decisions in the buildings. I know that they've dug into the data, they've looked at the class sizes, they looked at the students, and that they are doing the best to allow for continuity of service to our students and to provide student supports. Saw Mayor Cahill's hand next.
Thanks, Madam President. I guess I just want to ask Mr. Thomas and Dr. Trochik, you know, I said earlier just how much more money is going into our schools this coming year. I recognize that ESSER funds end, so we can't build positions with ESSER funds this coming year. I recognize that there were some ESSER some positions that started as ESSER funded but were identified as being positions we believe needed to be permanently or long-term on the operating budget, so they made their way over. So my understanding of the number of fewer positions we have district-wide and in any given school are a combination of formerly ESSER funded that we had determined needed to stop and enrollment related. Is that accurate? Because it's just, the narrative of all these fewer positions is really hard to listen to when we know how heavily we're investing in our schools and our students and our educators.
So the positions that were identified, first of all, for the last 3 years, in every presentation that I've done, when we talked about ESSER funding came in so that we could utilize it to address needs that were that came from the pandemic, right? That's really why the money came in and how we were utilizing that money. And I think in Beverly, we did a great job of working really hard to identify. We kept schools open for elementary kids that first year using ESSER funding. We bought curriculum for students. We utilized our ESSER fundings in the best way that we could. And when available, we added positions if it allowed us to provide additional interventions or services for students who were impacted by the pandemic. We made those decisions as we went along, and I know Mark wasn't there. Some of the shifts at the high school, while they may not have been identified that they were using ESSER funds, sometimes they come into play because there were available ESSER funds. I know that a couple of school adjustment counselors that were added at the high school came in on ESSER funds and were moved into the appropriated to address some of those social emotional needs. So you're correct. So some of the positions have always been funded by ESSER. And then this year, when it came down to it, and we do need to take a look at efficiencies, we need to look at enrollments, we need to make sure that we have a sustainable budget. interesting in light of the 1.5 million just added. But again, we have to look carefully and closely at how we do what we do. When we make decisions about positions, and Mark made some, we worked very hard throughout the year looking at his schedule, looking at enrollment numbers, we have more students going to Essex Tech, so that freed up some of those enrollment numbers for other things. But we cut an English teacher and a math teacher and a social studies teacher as well. This isn't just that we picked one particular program that we were going to look to eliminate, and we're not eliminating the program. I believe Mark has assured me, just as Lisa has assured me with the staffing that she has at the middle school, that the work that these two programs do will continue, and services will continue for the students that need them. They just might be delivered in a little different way. So that's why I'm confident in making the recommendation that I made around those positions.
Thank you, Dr. Trocheck and Mr. Thomas and Mayor Cahill. I saw Dr. Silva's hand next.
So is it accurate to say that the programs are not going away, it's just how they're being staffed? And
Absolutely, yep.
And can you speak to where we are now with regard to counselors, additional counselors that the high school has that can contribute also to this, where compared to where we were when the program started?
So I just want to be clear again, there's no reduction in counseling staff through this process. So all adjustment counselors are, that's remaining level from where we are right now. So as far as caseloads and access to adjustment counselors, that's not going to change for students around the mental health piece.
But in terms of where we were 2 or 3 years ago with adjustment counselors to now, would you say we're better?
Yeah,
prepared?
significant increase, yep.
Okay, so
There's been a significant increase in the number of counselors that we have over the past 4
We're very
years.
fortunate in that area, for sure.
that's what I wanted to emphasize. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay, the amendment on the table right now is to restore Reach and Beacon positions. Are there any final comments? I'll do Karen and then Ms. Coelho, because we already heard from Ms. Coelho.
Okay, so thank you. So I just wanted to start with, I just completely respect Dr. Trocheck, her hard work, and on the operation of schools, and I completely understand what you're saying, President Abel, about, we have to leave some decisions in your qualified hands. However, this is really the only place where we can, have these conversations openly and legally. And I hear everything that my colleagues on the school committee have said. I learn from each of you every time I sit in this chair. And I would just having been in education for 26 years, I see things that get tossed out a lot, and not without, thought, but it becomes detrimental to students. So I would just like to ask Mr. Thomas, would you say that it's in the best interest of student achievement to keep the Beacon program in place as it is with a adjustment counselor, a teacher, and a para, those people that are in there? Would you say that it's in the best interest of student achievement? Because that's how I'm supposed to make every decision in this seat.
So sitting here right now, I think it would be really difficult to pinpoint one position over another without really go. If you're, I have a number of positions that I'm looking to reduce, and if you tell me I'm getting any one of those back, it's going to improve student achievement in some way. So if you're telling me I'm going to get any one of these back, I'm happy. I'll take it and work with it. So I'm not answering your question directly, but I think there's a lot more that goes into it than one question about one position and how that will impact student achievement.
Thank you.
So I said I'd recognize Ms. Coelho and then Mayor Cahill. If you could keep it brief,
I just wanted to make a comment. It's not the program, it's the teachers and the paras who run the program that make a difference in the children's lives.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Mayor Cahill. Did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm clear on the amendment as it currently stands, because I don't know if what we're saying is we want to retain the Beacon program prior to getting more clarification on how it works, or if we're saying we want to retain the program as it is. So I just want to make sure either Ms. Visnick can repeat it, or.
Yeah,
if you just-
the
I
amendment
just
that I wrote down
changed
was
a
to
bit.
retain the Reach and Beacon positions.
Okay.
Meaning the positions that are slated to be cut, 2 people at approximately $65,000 each in the budget.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Mayor
Madam
Cahill.
President.
I'm sorry. I
So
don't-
now I'm confused. I thought that the program, the Beacon program at the high school, at present has a teacher and an adjustment counselor. And the proposal for next year is a paraprofessional and an adjustment counselor. So it has not had a teacher, a paraprofessional, and an adjustment. It's not a 3 adult staff program, or is it?
We actually have a paraprofessional spot slated for that. That's unfilled.
Right, I'm still confused. How many
Unfilled.
adults are in the room in the
This,
program?
this academic year, there've been 2 adults
yes.
full-time in
Right,
there.
okay,
That's-
so there are 2 adults, and the proposal is for 2 adults. The difference is, at present, one of the adults is a teacher. For next year, the proposal is that one of them would be a para. Okay.
Yes.
Just,
Sorry,
so we're all
I
talking the
messed that
same
up.
thing.
I apologize.
No, I mean, I just got all confused.
Okay. Okay, so we have the amendment to retain the Reach and Beacon positions. Are we ready to vote on that amendment? Looks like we are. All those in favor of asking the superintendent to find a way to retain the positions? It's 3. All those opposed to the amendment? 3.
Sorry,
Do you need me to
I-
restate?
no, I don't. I'm wondering, because we kept hearing variations of the staffing, whether we're voting about the same thing.
Okay.
So I can only state what I'm comfortable with, what I understand. We are not eliminating the program. That's important to me. We're staffing the program with 2 adults. That's important to me. It sounds like because there has not been staffing with a paraprofessional, we actually don't know what that would look like. Because part of the conversation, we were assuming there was one and a teacher. So it just feels like, for me, the critical thing is that there are 2 professionals in the room as we currently have it, but I can't speak to how that combination would work. So that's why maybe what I'm doing is I'm abstaining from the version I heard, because I feel like I can't really, we haven't been speaking to that, although it sounded like half the time we were.
Okay. Yes, Mayor Cahill.
My understanding is the program, when it was first created, was staffed by a paraprofessional and an adjustment counselor. That changed this year, a couple of years ago? Okay, so it has run both with a para and an adjustment counselor, and with a teacher and an adjustment counselor in different years.
Robert's rules, 3-3, and 1 abstention. The motion fails, correct?
Can I follow up with a question then? Because we bundled 2 programs in that amendment. I don't know what Reach is.
So Reach is the same version at the middle school, a similar approach. It's not, it also has been this year, first year only, staffed with a teacher and a school adjustment counselor, making a similar conversion to a para and a school adjustment counselor for next year. And it works a little differently. There's a different focus on sort of return from hospitalization more heavily at the high school than at the middle school. The middle school, it's been more supporting some behavioral, kinds of scenarios. I think with the addition of a director of restorative practices, we've had a shift in a lot of the things that we're doing. We believe that program, and Mrs. Oliver has, we've worked very carefully and closely to talk about that as well. Feels confident that with a paraprofessional, still 2 adults, but a paraprofessional and a school adjustment counselor, that program can continue to serve and meet the needs of students in the same way.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Silva.
So I'll just say that I'm pleased to hear that both programs are in place, because prior to the meeting, I thought one of them was going to be removed. And what I'm hearing is they're not, they will both be in place. It's just a staffing change.
Correct.
And which, in my opinion, the staffing and the decisions within the district, the school, should be left to the administrators. That's the reason why I'm voting the way I am.
Okay. Are we satisfied with that amendment? Okay. It has not progressed. Okay. We're back to the main motion, and Ms. Visnick, you're indicating you have something further.
I'll have two more amendments. My next amendment is that we increase the line item for substitute pay. We've increased the sub pay twice in the last 5 years, most recently in 2022, when it went from $95 a day to $110 a day. This rate of 110 puts us in the middle of our surrounding communities. Some pay as low as $95. Masco is an example of that. Some pay 105, Manchester, Essex, and some like Danvers, Peabody, and Salem pay 120 to 130. And then there's Lynn, they're a real outlier. When we have unfilled substitute positions, it hurts our staff and our students. There's no guarantee that a higher rate will result in our ability to fill every substitute position each day. However, I feel strongly that we need to make an attempt to do so. Our sub-fill rate is not great. And as such, I do believe that our sub-fill rate has improved since we voted to raise the substitute pay. I'm asking that we put money in the budget to raise that rate again to either 120 or 130 a day. And I believe, based on my discussions, our previous sub pay rate and my discussions with Dr. Trocek, that this will amount to approximately a $50,000 change to the budget.
Do you have the code for that line item? Okay, financial.
No, but thank you for, I'm sorry. No, I don't have the code. I'm
It's your
sorry.
birthday. You're off the hook. We'll figure that code out for the main motion, or for the amendment, but we need a second before we can continue. Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to comment? I know I have a thought, but I will refrain. Dr. Silva.
I'd like to ask the superintendent if she feels like there's a need to, her opinion on raising the rate and whether or not it's needed to attract the substitutes that we need for the school system.
So,
And what the recommendation, if there was to be an increase, what that would be.
Can I just clarify? You're asking us to increase the budget line item. You have not brought forward a rate request.
Correct.
Because the rate request would normally be on a regularly scheduled agenda.
In F&F.
In F&F. Okay. Just
Right.
want to make
So
sure
it's
we're
almost
understanding
like
this
your
is a
request
budget
to
line
put
item.
something in the reserve for negotiation. So we put this number, a higher number, in that line item. Then we can have the discussions later on about what the actual rate is, how much we can afford based on how much is in the line item.
So I just wanted to make sure that was clear for all of the members who maybe haven't been as practiced in the F&F world. Thank you, Dr. Trocek.
So I think I'm going to look to Jean a little bit. I mean, I think the line, I don't know that it's an inadequate amount of money in our line item for the sub budget rather than the individual rate for subs. I would absolutely say, when I actually asked for the increase to 110, and I do believe we saw a little uptick in that. Would an increase to 125 help us attract more subs? I think maybe. I'm not sure, though, that what an impact to that subline would be, or if we would need to make a change to the subline versus just a change to the rate, and how, because often, our sublines are utilized right now. One of the challenges with not being able to have subs in the district is that we're often asking paraprofessionals to cover, and they get paid a differential rate. And so if we didn't have, I think, I'm not sure that it's a $50,000 question for that line item. I do love the idea of talking about it at a committee meeting and raising the individual rate. I think that would be something that would be beneficial. So I guess that's my response.
Okay, Mayor Cahill.
I think what I could tell you, I think what I could tell you is that if you take 50,000 and divide it by $15 more a day, you'd get about 3,000 more days. I think that's,
Right.
if you're going from 110 to 125, that we would get about 3,000 more.
But I think the
Divide that by 180 days, if that, we don't know.
But I think that the thought about that number, what I think where Ms. Visnick got that number was the last time we did this, we did an estimate of what that cost of increasing the sub pay by $15 a day. I think that was, I think that if I'm following the data track that I'm sure she was on when she did it, I think that is something. So again, the question is whether or not the $50,000 is needed because we would have a fill rate that was higher or not is a question.
Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, Madam President. If I remember the last time that we had that conversation and approved a request by you to raise the sub rate, it was mid-budget year, mid-school year. And what you did was you identified a place to go to make an interdepartmental, you looked to some lines to put over. And I know that that's not always easy, but that's how we were able to collectively do that during the school year last time. As you haven't come and asked for and proposed an increase in the sub rate as part of this budget, I'm inclined to leave it there.
Colin, myself, I think I echo the mayor's sentiment. This could be something that we take up through our subcommittee, and we would do an interdepartmental transfer. I think the mayor has outlined we are making our biggest ask of the city in this budget. And, there are a number of things that we can look at, but I don't necessarily support it in this forum tonight. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
I just want to maybe underscore a couple things as we're talking about this particular line item. I totally respect the protocol process for it to go to your committee, for us to have that conversation. I do want to say, to be set up for success, if we believe that we will require more of our paraprofessionals in terms of availability, we need to make sure that's possible. And I'm concerned that we've seen throughout the pandemic and after, we continue to rely on these professionals to bear the brunt of many hats in the building. And if this is one of the ways that we can assure that they are allowed to do their job uninterruptedly, I would really want to make sure we think long and hard about not being in a position where we need to pull them from what they're really working on. And so if we can look at this as a line item in our finance and facilities conversations, looking at surrounding districts, I would even say look at anything qualitatively that tells us how we can get more people to want to be subs in our building, then I think we should consider that.
Thank you for those comments. Ms. Visnick, I see your hand.
So backing up, I guess I want to just pile on to the agreement that we have hired Dr. Trocheck to be our educational expert and to lead us, and that there are many decisions that I absolutely defer to. I'm just going to reiterate something I said in my opening, which is that I am in a seat where I believe I should be representing people who ask me to do something balanced with my own moral beliefs. So I really hope you take no disrespect in my requests this evening. And Madam President, I wish to say teacher pay was not the only thing that we heard in our 5-hour meeting 2 weeks ago. There were several other issues that I think were equally important. And so, although I also respect you and your comment that maybe we can find the money somewhere else, as you said, this is our chance to say, what do we find that we want changed? What do we believe? As you and I have often said, our budget is our moral document. And I think it's incredibly important that we have a higher substitute fill rate, and we have seen it bump up when we bumped up the pay. That relatively speaking, to say, can we have another $50,000 when we're talking about a $78 million budget seems a little more than ridiculous. And Mr. Mayor, I really wish to try to not look a quote unquote gift horse in the mouth, right? There's a lot of money. You made a motion to bump up, 0.2 million more than President A. Bell. And so to some extent, I go, let's go. What's another 100,000? What's another 50,000? I'm very concerned about our substitute fill rate, and as Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza just said, what we ask of others when we have a room that doesn't get a sub on a given day.
Mayor Cahill.
Thank you. This is not substantive at all. I do this to myself. I said interdepartmental and I meant intra.
Intra.
And the grammar gets me. And then if I didn't say it, if I didn't correct it, I'd be carrying it all night. Thanks.
And Ms. Bergeron or Ms. Wilson, whoever's taking our minutes, that's intra RA. Okay. I wish to actually respond to Ms. Visnick, since this is the place that we can actually talk. What is another $100,000, right? I appreciate and understand the priorities. I think Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza raises it as well, that we need to make sure that our paraprofessionals are able to do their jobs and not being pulled to cover for the lack of substitute teachers. And I think that is something that we as a body will address in a subsequent meeting. We'll have to figure something out. But what is $100,000? It can be another $15 in our para's paycheck. It can be another educator. It can be, there are so many $100,000 can be put to good use. And so I'm a little afraid, and I was being conservative at 1.3 million, right? Like, I'm like that, if you like do this, and I appreciate that you have amendments that are coming forward. I think that there's work that the school committee does need to do. I would like us to be able to vote on our budget soon. We actually have a couple other agenda items this evening. This is not one of the amendments that I'm going to support. And it's not because I don't think it's a valuable conversation for us to have. I just don't think this is where we're going to have it tonight. And I appreciate where you got your number. But to Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza's point, like, it's a bigger conversation. So. Was there anyone else that wanted to talk to this amendment? Are we ready to vote, and are we clear? The amendment was to increase the line for sub pay, the sub fill rate, and you said 50,000.
Without a department number, yes, sorry.
Yeah, it's OT.
Jean, save me.
275-61872.
61000.
Oh, 61000. My
The one you
printout is
picked
so
was
tiny.
long-term sub.
Oh, that's the long-term sub. Okay.
You were right there, though.
Okay, 61000. So the amendment is to increase by $50,000, OT 275-618-6100, sorry. Any final questions on the vote that we are making for this amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? We have 3. Those opposed? 4. The motion fails.
Madam President, I have one more amendment.
Okay. Ms. Visnick.
I wish to give everybody else an opportunity, though. Anybody else got one?
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza has one.
Yes, go.
I think mine is less of an amendment. I'm probably going to get in less trouble this way. What I'm trying to do, similar to our conversation just now about our sub rate, is I want to put some things on the record to consider for how we will move forward in a much larger conversation. It may not be the time or place, but I feel strongly about librarian support. I understand the current format is substandard for what we're trying to do, and it requires more thought and planning. Maybe we're talking about grants. I mean, there's a lot of other opportunities. So I just want to make sure as a district we commit to thinking about a sustainable plan to support our libraries, and in a way that actually feels effective to the experience of children. And I know we were excited about a position, and it's not ideally set up to do the kind of functions that a full-time librarian would do, and I think we require more time and planning, but I would like to make sure that it is a priority for us to figure this out. If not in this current budget conversation, I feel like it should not be left to become the default position that we do not have a librarian that's full-time serving our elementary schools. And I would argue that being able to serve it in a greater capacity than has been happening. And so, like I said, I'm aware that it is a more complicated budget conversation because we don't necessarily serve our students well the way it's laid out now. But I would definitely want to make sure we do not give up on that opportunity to help our students have a fuller experience.
Thank you, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. So I'm not hearing an amendment at this time, and as chair of
It
the
is a priority recommendation.
Okay, as a chair for curriculum instruction and student life, will you take the action item to put that on a future agenda?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Dr. Silva?
I would just like to reiterate the same feeling about the state of where the libraries are in the elementary school. Hearing about special ed and all the additional effort that we're paying and supporting to bring our children up to where they should be with reading. Doing that while we are not supporting our libraries is really not a well-balanced solution. So I would 100% agree with this position and say that we don't let go of it until we have a solution.
Thank you. I'm looking for any other hands before I ask Ms. Bisnick for your third amendment.
Thank you, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, because my final amendment is the elementary librarian. I'm very concerned about our collections. I do understand that there's a plan in place, and we have, in fact, had many years of no one in the position of an elementary librarian. However, I do not believe the maintenance of our collections can or should fall onto members of the staff who are not trained or licensed as a librarian. So, again, our budget is a moral document, and if we believe that libraries are important and the collections in our library are important to maintain and be up to date, I understand fully that the position as it's currently envisioned is not working well. However, I don't believe we should have zero money allocated to someone who is dedicated to maintaining our collections across our libraries. That could be maybe envisioned as a curator, as a part-time retired librarian who comes in and does nothing but curate our collections. And maybe this goes to Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza's bigger conversation, but to say we're walking away from it and there's nothing in the budget, or we have to go find an departmental transfer to make it happen, I believe just feels horrible, because we were already there for 10 years, and then we were all very excited to bring somebody back. And I, I can't help but not mention the fact that our Beverly Public Library also has its collection at risk because our city council voted to not renovate the building and fix the HVAC issues. So as a city, I think we're kind of falling down right now relative to our appreciation for the value of public libraries and the access. There's tons of data. Barb Fecto presented at a statewide conference about the number of books that are checked out when there's a librarian versus not, and it 1,000% goes to an equity issue. And this entity, our school committee, has dedicated itself to equity issues on many different fronts. And so collectively, for that reason, I'm asking that we put some amount of money in, again, to a line item. I don't have a number. Jean, please save me. That will allow us to hire someone in the position of being a curator for our elementary libraries.
So the motion is to add new funds to the budget for a line item for a librarian position. Is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. I'll go. Again, Dr. Churchak and our building leadership have had numerous conversations about the positions in the building and the roles within our district. I'm of the feeling that many of the arguments that are being raised are great arguments. They're not for tonight. And I do feel it's fiscally irresponsible for us to be restoring positions to this budget tonight. I can already see overcommitments on the horizon for what we're doing with this budget. The operational base grows in proportion to each and every staff member we bring on, as it also affects healthcare costs and our contractual obligations. We're already asking the city for more than, was it 5 point or 6 point something in increases this year. And it just compounds for FY26 and FY27. I think that we have a lot that remains to be determined over the summer. And until such time, I'm very hesitant to go against the recommendations that our building leadership has at this time for us. And I really worry about next year's budget already. So I'm not going to support this amendment. But it's not because I don't support libraries and librarians in our schools and in our city. Are there any other comments? Mayor Cahill.
I won't try to say what you just said. I appreciate your words. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we have an amendment on the table to add a budget line to support elementary librarian work. Are we prepared to vote? All those in favor of the amendment to add budgetary, what was the number? I didn't, it's just, was there a number? You don't have a number, okay. Funds. Okay. All those in favor of funds to support a librarian position in this budget? 4. Okay. And those opposed? 3. Okay.
That's a horrible
I don't know
amendment.
how to work with an amendment that doesn't have a number, so.
Exactly.
I also want maybe Ms.
Madam-
Besnick to clarify too, because I
Yeah.
think she was, I'm trying not to read your mind here, but I felt like there was some, I feel like there was some alignment there. I don't know that she said librarian. I think what we said was we are looking to support the library in a way that allows it to be professionally managed, and we are open to what those titles are.
So let's withdraw,
that's the
let's
funding I
withdraw
think
the
we're
vote.
talking-
Perhaps I presented the motion
Okay.
incorrectly. And maybe we can,
Madam President,
Mayor Cahill.
I don't mean to be a stickler.
Yeah.
One, I'd like to talk about this, but two, I think the only way to do anything different is for somebody among you four to move reconsideration.
I move
And then have
reconsideration.
reconsideration.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I haven't used that in a
prevail.
while.
So moved.
Motion to reconsider.
Motion to reconsider.
All those that are.
Somebody's got a second her
Yeah.
motion.
We have second here. Okay. Thank you. And then they have to vote to reconsider?
I think we all
We
get
all
to
do.
vote to
All get to
reconsider,
vote,
yeah.
okay. Would we like to reconsider our just prior
Yes,
vote?
yes to
Okay.
reconsider.
Yes to reconsider. Okay, so 7-0. We haven't used that in years. Okay.
So I hear what Dr. Mackenzie DeFranz is saying, because Mrs. Visnick was talking more about somebody, not necessarily a librarian.
Okay.
And I don't want to say this lightly, because we just talked about this in terms of subpay, but at present, there is not money dedicated, identified in this budget for that elementary librarian position. I'm more inclined, based on Dr. Trochik's decisions in putting together the budget presentation and prioritization, I'll continue to vote against an amendment that has a dollar amount going to the elementary school libraries, not because I don't want to see the libraries be a valuable resource, but again, because Dr. Trochik and her team at the central office and in all the schools made that decision collectively. So and Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, your words were fantastic. I easily, go along with the desire and commitment to work through this as we go forward. I think that could lead to decisions being made during the course of the year or heading into next budget year that might look at this differently. So, thanks.
Ms. Visnick.
I don't know of any other position in our district where we would hire somebody to fill a position that, from a qualification point of view, requires a master's degree. So the idea that we would ask somebody to do more of a job in addition to your regular job, we want you to do this extra little thing. And oh, by the way, technically, you're really unqualified because you don't have any training in how to manage a collection because you're not a trained. I don't even want to say the title because I don't want to like tick anybody off, right? So that's like media specialist, licensed librarian, whatever is their title. And so I think that it's. Again, I'm going to try to tiptoe on this line of being incredibly respectful of, our educational leader has this plan versus what I heard at the podium versus what I have in my inbox and what's on my phone messages. And then the sniff test, right? It doesn't look good. We are public education, and to say that we have nobody on staff that is a licensed librarian to manage our collections at our 5 schools, it just doesn't. It's not the moral statement that I want to make. Therefore, my amendment is I'm going to pull a number out of my curly hair, and I'm going to say I would like us to make a $50,000 allocation, $10,000 per elementary school, to hire someone to manage the collections, to curate those collections, who is a qualified media specialist. So that's my amendment, $50,000. And so we have the money there. If we can find somebody to do the job, if we can re-envision that position and make that part of our plan, we'll have the money to do it as a commitment to our elementary libraries.
Okay, Ms. Coelho, you had the second on the first description of the amendment. Are you still?
I'll second it again.
Yes. So the refined amendment that we're reconsidering puts the dollar value of $50,000, $10,000 per elementary for a qualified media specialist, if we can find them. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Okay. I feel like the necessity to apply an amount and title puts us in a position where it sounds like we have some clear understanding of how this might go. And I'm trying to suggest that we don't necessarily know how this is going to go. We might have 2 people part-time split somehow. I don't know. And I don't know how we have an amendment that says we are going to do something about this. I think that's what I am really passionate about. But I do not want us tonight to say something that is not well thought out or feasible or sustainable. So I'm feeling like it's unfortunate that we need Ms. Visnick to come up with a number for it to be a part of our budget considerations, because I don't know that, I know that she would probably want to do lots of research and really think about this. So I understand the need for a budget number. The way that amendment is currently stated makes it hard for me to say yes, because I don't know what that entails to say 50,000 media specialists. So I think if there is a way that, Ms. Abel, you think I can frame it to, again, just have on the record and have as a part of our priority considerations that we do want to ensure that our libraries are managed and supported appropriately, and to have the time to really think about how to fund that and support that. But I feel like it's a little premature to have to come up with a number to have it be considered. So I don't know, is there no other way around
Just
that?
before this amendment, I'll remind you, you brought
Yes.
forward the commitment to bring the topic to the Curriculum Instruction Student Life Standing Committee.
Which I would like to do, but it sounds like we're reconsidering it because we needed to attach a budget number. Is that?
Yes,
the
because
case?
our budget is a number. Not only is it a moral statement, it is a number. So, thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. So I think having these amendments shows what we value. So I just don't think that that number is showing what we value. And I think that that's showing what we had already that wasn't working. So I think that if we were to make any amendment, it would have to be for a much higher number.
Bring a friendly amendment, bring it. Why not?
I've never made a friendly amendment, but,
Better than a not friendly amendment.
okay.
So you can say further amendment.
So I'd like to further amend that that amount would be, I would say $150,000. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Okay, so there is an amendment to the amendment to increase the 50,000 for a media specialist.
Second.
Okay, I have many, but okay, so, okay. Dr. Silva, everyone says you were first.
So I have a question to Dr. Cherchak. If we asked as a committee for you in the school district to focus on grants to fund all of the elementary schools outside of the budget, could this be something that we ask you to do in this coming year to focus attention on finding and trying to retain grant funds to do this?
We can certainly focus on we'll be very heavily looking for grant funds for everything. And we can certainly put put that out, as a priority area. If I may, maybe I shouldn't say anything, but I'm thinking that what I'm really hearing is there's a call for a study to be done on what would be effective and how that would be effective. And I'm not sure that there's a funding number that's going to meet what you're saying. I believe that that's what curriculum instruction and student life and Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza and Dr. Flaherty, and that's sort of the role of that committee. And so I acknowledge that that's something that I've had in conversations with many of you, that, we really just need to take a different look at how we do it and what works best. I don't know that it's probably a good idea to try to just pick a number out of the air as to what that would do. Because there are, we're making some tough decisions about what we're doing in positions that we're, kind of looking at very closely. I think, I've made a commitment even to the other positions that I'm watching enrollments at some of the classes, at some of the grade levels. I'm watching the EL enrollment at the elementary level, because we know that we may need to have another EL teacher. We do that regularly. That's part of our regular work that we do over the summer. I'm not sure that a funding number for this is as necessary as a commitment from the CISL committee to talk more about what is the right fit for Beverly, what is the right way to use it, and how can we best do it. So I'm just kind of weighing in on that, because I'm hearing all of these great intentions for us to do some work, but I think there needs to be some conversation and analysis about what it is that we, so there are a list of millions of, when I put my slide up earlier on, there were a number of ways in which we were going to provide supports to make sure the library still functioned, to make sure that students went in and were able to get to the collections. The curating piece is the one piece that I know that Ms. Visnick is bringing forward, and that's a great question, and it's a great question for us to answer collaboratively, I think, through that committee. So I guess that's just my suggestion to all of you.
Okay, so we have an amendment to the amendment currently under discussion. The amendment to the amendment is 150,000. Ms. Robinson.
I just wanted to say to Dr. George, I agree that we need to have these conversations, and I think it's imperative that we include Barb Fecto and Alex Wazik in these, because they're the experts. Other schools look to them as mentors for what they've done with our libraries. Other schools use their summer reading programs. They do unbelievable work. And I would just say that whatever conversations we have, they're at the table for those conversations, because I think that could help tremendously to look to our own experts.
Okay, Mayor Cahill?
Madam President, I'm going to suggest a request that my colleagues withdraw the amendment. We are trying to stretch in a way we've never stretched before. The city side of this budget has to carry federally mandated 4.5% every year increases in pension investment. The city side of this budget has to cover health care for all retirees, city and school. The city side of this budget has to carry all the debt service, including all the debt service for all the school buildings. And in fairness, police station too, and other things. But there are very few places, extremely few. I named the 2 places to look on the city side of the budget to be able to provide more tax dollars to the school budget. I heard a lot of really worthy things too at the public hearing. And I felt that the place that we needed to respond was in acknowledging, recognizing, and dedicating the funding that we believe we need to pay our educators more. And that's where my proposal came from. And I, believe me, I would love it if we were, if we were staffing our libraries in a way that we all felt great about. Maybe someday we will. I think what we need to do is, I get the sense we're all in agreement that this conversation is really important to have with our educational leaders over the coming weeks and months. And I just, that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Request heard. Ms. Visnick.
I love that you said "and." I'm a big fan of the "and," both "and" versus the either or. And I understand and I'm trying fairly mightily to respect your request, but I can't do it. And I understand that you wear another hat in addition to the hat that we all wear. And so I think that when we have the conversation, not if, because I have 1,000% expectation that Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza and Sissel will have this conversation and that there will be many other conversations. And when we come to a decision about what we want to do, if there are no funds to do it, then the conversation is just wasted time. And so if, in fact, our body values it, then we should put a number, a placeholder to fund what we may well decide to do. Otherwise, the decision is for naught. Or we go rob Peter to pay Paul, which is what we're going to be doing anyway. But my responsibility, as I said in the beginning of this evening, I believe, is to represent what I have heard from my constituents. And you ask any elementary parent in any of our 5 elementary schools, and they'll say, yeah, I want a librarian. And it's really kind of ridiculous that we're even having that conversation. And yes, there are competing resources, and we need to figure it out. And if it was easy, I would have people running against me. I would love to retire from this job. I won't walk away from my responsibility. It's not easy. I understand that. My motion stands.
And the amendment to that motion is for 150,000, so that will be our next vote. Ms. Coelho, did you want to weigh in on the 150,000 earmarked for media specialists?
I just wanted to make a comment. Mayor Cahill, I hear you, and I respect everything that you say. And with the draft budget, with the increased positions and the decreased positions, the difference reflected is a decrease of 7.4 positions. we're only asking for a few positions to stay, and one of them is, a couple special ed positions, which were downed, and a librarian, which is needed. If a high school librarian was outed, there'd be an outrage. If the middle school librarian was outed, there'd be an outrage. The elementary school librarian runs all 5 libraries, and there was an outrage. We heard it from everybody. We need the librarian. Even if it's a different librarian, we need a librarian to help run and manage the chaos of the hundreds of little booger fingers that touch all those books. You need to have it. You can't just let some random person do it. You can't. You need to have a qualified person to manage that chaos in all 5 schools. You can't just have some random person do it. We need to have a qualified person do it.
Let's call a vote on, I was going to call a vote on the
I'm
amendment
sorry,
of
I
150.
don't want a complex,
Sub-amendment. Okay.
complex
Go ahead, Dr. McKenzie.
situation. So I'm just going to make this comment, and then we could think about withdrawing or not. I support the idea of a, quote, placeholder so that we have some teeth in this if we can figure it out. So I think the original number sounded like a placeholder to me. I don't think that is going to fix the issue per se, but it says we've committed some funds here to start figuring this out. I'm nervous about a much higher figure that's not based on time and contemplation. So the original amendment I felt comfortable with, but if we are now, if the vote is now for the amended amendment, I just want to make sure if that's what we're voting on.
First vote is the amended amendment of $150,000 for a qualified media specialist. And then when we vote or don't vote that, it would either increase or revert to the $50,000 that Ms. Visnick's original amendment contained. So the first vote, just to be clear, is for $150,000 to be allocated to a qualified media specialist. Those in favor of $150,000 allocation for this amendment? 3. And those opposed? 4. So now the amendment is reverted back to $50,000 allocation for a qualified media specialist. Is there any further discussion? I'll call the vote. Those who wish to support a $50,000 allocation for qualified media specialist. 4. And those, 5, sorry, 5. And those opposed? 1, 2.
Ms. Abel? I
Yes.
would use an account number OT 115-612-05.
Thank you, Ms. Sherburne.
And let the minutes reflect OT 115-612-05 for a $50,000 allocation. So if we're playing along at home, our budget request with amendments is now $78,268,648. Sure. $78,268,648.
Sable, can you say that one?
Did you add 50,000?
I added 50.
So can you give me that number one more time?
Sure. 78,268,648.
I had a different number.
Jean has a different number.
You have a different number? I had before 78,218,648 with the 1.5.
Yeah, I am. Sorry. I'll go with whatever you guys have, but I wrote down a different number when you got your 1.5.
I thought that, well, our original number was 76,717,064.
That's the number I had.
And then when you add 1.5 million to that,
Yeah.
it's going to be, go Jean, go.
Did I write the wrong
Just
number?
50,000 is going to be 78,267,064, I thought.
064? Okay, I must have written the other number wrong.
Say it again.
78.
Seventy.
78,267,064.
Okay. 064. Mayor Cahill.
So that, all that back and forth is meant to say that the the budget proposal that we went to public hearing with is now being proposed to be increased by 1.550, 1,550,000.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Say it again? 1,550,000. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other discussions on the total budget request, which is now at $78,267,064? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of forwarding our recommended budget to the mayor's office to be then sent to city council for $78,267,064? You have 5. All of those opposed? Ms. Visnick, are you opposed or abstaining?
I am painfully opposed.
Opposed. The motion carries 5-2. Dr. Chorchak, I believe you have another action item for the school committee.
All right, so what I have now is the district.
Microphone, please.
Oh, thank you. I've been really bad with my microphone tonight. I really apologize, Kim. All right, so what I have right now is the district improvement plan. And again, I don't know, for those of you who recall, typically we have been doing for the last couple of years our progress update for all of you. And at the city council, the joint city council this year, it took a different format. So I'm going to quickly go through. I know that I'm watching the clock and know the lights will go at 10. This is we have worked across. First of all, I'm going to provide you with an update on the progress of last year's goals, and then I'm going to show you the proposed goals for the coming year.
Ask a question, is
Yeah, Mary Hill.
there a time sensitivity to this, or might it be better done another way?
Well, I will say, yes, there is, and I'll give you the reason why, because the schools build their school improvement plans off of the district improvement plan, so you have to approve the goals of the district improvement plan, so the schools can then build their school improvement plans. So, thank you for asking that. And I wanted, so I promise you I'll go rather quickly. So most of this is review for all of you. Each one of these there's nothing new coming forward. I've previewed this for you over the last few months as to what our goals are going to be. And these are our goals from last year, and this is really just a summary of our accomplishments on our goals from our past plan in the first few slides. So just to begin, we had a goal area of creating conditions that promote equity. Under that, there were 2 goals: fostering a positive school community and ensuring a whole child approach to success. So just summarizing some of the accomplishments of that goal in terms of what our benchmarks were. Under fostering a positive school community, we created the creation and function of the superintendent's student ambassador cabinet for year 2, and you will actually have the pleasure of meeting with some of our student ambassadors cabinet next year, at our next meeting. They are going to come at the beginning of the next meeting for recognition and to introduce themselves and let you hear a little bit from them. Professional development for staff based on best practices, fostering student voice, implementation of the house system at the middle school, which has been a huge success in the social, emotional, and inclusivity and sense of belonging at the school. Implementation and support of student and staff programs, Project 351 equity clubs, affinity groups, community conversations, and also the undertaking of a course design of understanding democracy. That's the course that there is a committee of teachers working with some students to provide voice and suggestion as to how that will go forward. This is all review. You saw this before. This is really Megan Sudak's update from City Connects, which she gave a month and a half ago. I believe it was at a CISL meeting, but this is all of the success and the data around some of the work that City Connects has done with our students in our community, as well as the snapshot of the partners that they have identified. One of our real goals this year in the second year was to take a look at increasing the number of partners that we have in our communities that we can help connect our students with and our families with. And this is just not an exhaustive list, but a beginning of a list of some of the partners that were identified by that goal. We also had a goal around rigorous and consistent curriculum, including looking at high-impact teaching strategies and advanced coursework. Our high-impact teaching strategies really focused around the professional development that we've been providing our teachers, and the goal was to strengthen core instruction and reduce achievement and opportunity gaps by using culturally responsive, inclusive, high-impact instructional strategies. Along with the adoption of many of our new programs came professional development and the kind of professional development that were provided. This is a list of the activities that take place at the elementary level that we have in place that support high-impact teaching strategies. This is the same list at the middle school, and I really want to point out the TNTP partnership that we have that focus specifically on instructional priorities grounded in data in the area of math. We know that our local data has shown that this has had a really great impact on achievement for particularly in our grades 5 through 8. That partnership provided a lot of opportunities for growth, along with some of the same activities that we do at the elementary. And then at the high school, this is a list of the number of things that we have done in terms of supporting educator growth in the area of high-impact teaching strategies. I will point out a couple of these that were particularly impactful: the Facing History courses and coaching sessions that were supported by a grant that we got teaching the Holocaust and human behavior, and the Salem State professional development opportunities that we took part in as a part of that grant as well. So a lot of great opportunities for teachers in professional growth. And then finally, the fourth goal was advanced coursework. And again, Julie Ferrara presented much of this information to you previously, so this is not all new, but the designated pathways that we have had approved as we are now designated as an innovative pathway school, additional career pathways that BHS offers, and then the exploration of future pathways. So this is a huge undertaking, and I'm sorry that I'm going so quickly because the work that's being done at the high school is so important, and they've done a really good job. But this kind of came out of the goal that we had around our advanced coursework, as well as taking a look at our advanced coursework for career readiness. We have increased our partnerships with Salem State around free dual enrollment. We have Endicott ran a dual enrollment course this summer as well. Virtual high school, we have access on our virtual high school area. And then finally, our after doc programs, which I've spoken at quite length to all of you about programs at Essex Tech and Salem State. We received the early college designation for fall of 2025. We are currently already engaged with North Shore Community College, and we're expanding that into Salem State. We're in those conversations and discussions now for expanding that early college designation to the Salem State University as well. And then finally, just some data regarding the enrollment of students of color. This was a specific goal that we had in our equity audit that we carried into our district improvement plan. And just some data points for you. In 2023, 32% of students in a cohort took at least one honors or AP class. In 23-24, 55% of students, that's the student group of students of color, took at least one honors or AP class, and in 2023, 61% of students in the cohort grades 9 through 12 took at least one honors or AP course. We implemented equity and AP workshops for our AP teachers in 21-22, which we believe really launched some of the work that we did in our advanced placement. We created an advanced placement ambassador program in 2022 to really have student voice out, encouraging our students to engage in advanced coursework, and our teachers, the Teacher Student Advanced Coursework Initiative, teachers identified underrepresented students to discuss. So each teacher would tap on the shoulder, so to speak, 4 or 5 students and reach out individually to try to encourage their participation in advanced coursework. And then finally, climate action planning, one Mrs. Visnick will find true to her heart. This was our goal for last year, our climate action planning, and this really looked closely at kind of bringing together some stakeholders to talk about and begin the conversation regarding recycling, trash reduction, food and waste diversion. We had a series of probably 6 meetings, I think, across the course of the year, promoting district and school-wide awareness and partnering with community organizations to provide students with opportunities. So those are sort of the accomplishments of last year's district improvement plan. And now I'm bringing forward to you a draft of our 24-27 school district improvement plan. This is the goals. They're outlined for you here for your approval so that the schools may build on them. But one of the things that we are moving forward with this year is an opportunity to make a more substantial document out of these goals, working together, trying to create a really strong narrative and document around our 3-year plan going forward. I will bring that narrative to you probably in September or October. We'll be building it over the summer and making sure that we have a really good plan to bring forward for publication.
Okay, so what you're saying is you want us to give our approval for the goal areas, and then we'll see them again in new
Correct.
packaging.
That-
Okay.
Correct. We're going to work on trying to put the strategic plan document together in a way that is a little more professional looking and a good document to represent the Beverly Public Schools.
Thank you.
Our goal areas this year, we've shifted a little bit, designing our equity continuum, diversity, belonging, inclusivity, and equity, empowering educators, and innovative practices. We, just so that you know, we have spent the last 4 months engaging stakeholder groups in these conversations. We visited every single school, met with every single staff, received feedback from them. We surveyed the community, we surveyed the staff to kind of make sure that we had feedback on what it was going to go. I'm going to actually ask Dr. Morgan if he's still, yep, he's still here, and Dr. Flaherty to kind of help me out because a lot of this work is work that they've done. So, Dr. Morgan, you have mic back there. You can. So we have 5 areas that we've identified: fostering belonging within our schools, chronic absenteeism, high-impact strategies, expanding civics understanding, and climate action. And so, Dr. Morgan, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Torochek. I think as we talk about designing our equity continuum, what we're really doing is we're focusing on really what equity in education really means. From our perspective, it's really about developing all of our students. It's about supporting informed and well-educated citizens who are really the foundation for stronger economies and more resilient societies in the future. As a means of gauging our progress on embedding equity in the identified areas where we might improve our existing work, we facilitated a survey with our district staff and families. The first chart in this section displays the results. No chart. All right, so we had some charts, and they gave us some insight. I told you to take them out?
You tell me to take them out.
So we had some charts,
Nix the charts, he said.
which indicated how our stakeholders felt about the work that we were doing around equity. And it was really somewhat synonymous across both staff and families in terms of whether we were doing a good job. Some thought we were, some thought we had some areas of improvement. But the message was still the same, that we still had some work that we wanted to do. Stakeholders felt that, collectively, we were moving in the right direction. And so, as we talk about this slide really indicates our pathway for equity. And research indicates that it takes about 10 years, minimally, for equity to get embedded into a public school district. The orange line that you see drawn between diversity and belonging represents where we are currently in our district work. Our chosen process is a continuum, which moves from diversity to belonging, from belonging to inclusion, and then from inclusion to equity. And if we can use as a parallel to describe these terms, diversity is like being asked to the party. Belonging is how comfortable and welcome we feel going to the party. Inclusion is likened to being asked to help plan the party. And then we get to our final column, equity, where we're able to redefine what the party really entails, who has the power to plan the party, and whether there should even be a party or not. So DBI work collectively is not just something that we do once a week. Instead, it is an experience that we embrace as a major part of our everyday practices. And it's really essential on how we grow together and how we are building trusting, learning, and lasting communities. Dr. Trocheck.
Yep, and so these are the individual steps that we have in it. We crafted a goal that will go with it, and these are the individual benchmarks that we will be working on throughout the year in search of that movement along that continuum. So I won't read them all to you out of deference. And I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Flaherty now.
So a second bullet that will be a focus for this year is still under designing our equity continuum, but it really has to do with the work that you've seen City Connects kind of really embrace and take on as the leader. And it is in taking this year where they have built relationships within schools, within families, and within partnerships within the community to now peel back another layer and to get deeper into specific work that we've identified as one of our most crucial barriers to student achievement, which is addressing chronic absenteeism. So you'll remember this slide, I showed this at CISL, where, just so that you have a framework of what we're talking about when we talk about good attendance. And so the DESE and nationally, what is considered to be chronic absenteeism is a student that has missed 10% or more school days. So that's 18 days within a school year. We also use that mark as a monthly goal. So we look at any student who has missed the 10% mark for that many days in the school year for being at risk because they're now on target to meet that target of 18 days by the end of the year. The City Connects, led by Megan Sudak, they have really put a big focus in planning into the fall. And some of the things that you will see, and you're actually going to get to see the first kind of showing of the acronym that they're going to be using with the elementary schools. They're going to go with a superhero theme, and then each of the schools will have their own kind of avatars with the people that they see for the most in the front offices as the faces. But they're doing a media campaign, which will be kind of an all-out blitz starting in September that has, you know, the kind of the swag. So we get kids wanting to wear the tags and put them on their backpacks. And they're talking about working with different businesses. We've already been in contact with over 200 doctors, and we'll be giving information out to them and asking them to partner with us to give information to families when they're visiting the doctor's office. They are going to be doing and planning a back-to-school event that will be more like a fair-type atmosphere where there'll be fun activities, there'll be food, they're going to have back-to-school haircuts, back-to-school backpacks, a real family engagement type night. And the acronym they're going to use at the elementary school is Be an Attendance Hero, and that's going to stand for Here, Every Day, Ready, and On Time. And one of the big feedback that we got from staff when we were going around and collecting data was that attendance can't just be about absences, because one of the bigger issues is tardies. And so if students are coming late, 4 out of 5 days a week, they may always be missing their math class, or they may always be missing their ELA class. And so it's really putting a focus on not just being at school, but making sure you're there in time so that you're not losing important learning along the way. September is National Attendance Awareness Month, and they're going to be doing the brag tags that I talked about and really making it a Tier 1 support to start off the school year. So trying to get all kids to be bought into the importance of coming to school, sharing that information with families and why it's important that, if a student wakes up tired, is it sick or is it tired? If they're just tired, then we really need to try to be getting them to school, because you don't know, next week they might really be sick and they might need to take that day off. Thinking about, are we pulling kids out of school to, go do a fun activity or to do a family event, which maybe once it's a special treat in a year, that's one thing. But if you're pulling them out once a week, then that's another impact to their learning.
Oh, question, do you want to?
Dr. Silva?
Sure.
Can you remind us what the numbers are for chronic absenteeism in high school and elementary and middle school? Just, I just want to, are we talking 5%? Are we talking 2%?
You mean the number that are chronically absent?
The number of students?
Well, after the
that fit
pandemic, we
this
were over 30% at the high school. Our middle schools were in the 20% and.
This year?
No, this is as we were coming out.
At
They've
the-
cut them down. I don't have the number right at the top of my head. Our high school, I believe, was in the low 20s. Our middle school had dropped into the high teens, and then our elementary was in a kind of a continuum. We had some that had gone back to almost where they were pre-pandemic, and we had a couple of schools that was still high for them, which was in the like the 10 to 13% range.
If I'm correct, Desi has a resource. I think I shared the link with you. I can share it with the committee
Yeah,
where you
and
can look at subgroups as well to really get
It
a.
just came out this week, and we're showing that our numbers dropped, so that's a good thing. It dropped meaning got
Less people.
got less people.
Getting better.
Getting better.
Getting
Yes.
better.
Okay.
The opposite.
I don't know who had their hand up first. Okay, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
I have a three-part question, and I swear it's going to be fast. So one question I had is whether we have identified root causes for another conversation, but like, do we have a sense of who's late and why?
Yep.
Number two, I'm assuming these are mostly walkers to school, or are these students who are coming with their parents? So is this also an issue of adults needing to get children
Yes.
to school? It is, okay. And then finally, for our walkers, I'm wondering if we have considered, for another conversation, whether the businesses and entities along the routes they take could participate in some way with moving them along and also having signage and helping them to know when they need to be at school. I get the sense when I'm coming along, they don't have a sense of what time it is or where they're supposed to be at what time sometimes. And just thinking about whether we have routes that we identify where most of our children are walking, where maybe we also partner with those businesses to help them to encourage our children to move along, but also have maybe signage and other types of participation in our incentive program. So just trying to think about, as we do this, more conversation around root causes, incentivizing also the ways they get to school and who's getting them there, and also what we can do with the pathway to school as well.
I'll pass those along to the committee, and they do have a lot of root cause information, and it's different for the upper grades. The high school walking is, the walkers are the higher limits. Elementary, it's more the kids that are getting driven. So it changes depending on the level.
Okay, Ms. Robinson, you have a question?
Thank you. No, I think I just wanted to suggest that we take a look at dismissals as well. And people who might be in the school, but not in their classes, wanderers, if you will.
We do have that as a focus, that administration at both the middle and the high school. And I will say significant decline in both middle and high school with some of the initiatives that have been put in place over the last few months even. That's been a very evident area that's been addressed since the pandemic, at least if you want to look historically over the last few years. So.
Dismissals too?
Not dismissals, the wanderers.
Okay, thank
The
you.
wanderers.
Okay, Dr. Flaherty, you have more?
Nope.
Nope. I think I have this one too, though.
Yep.
Right? And so our next objective is on empowering educators. This builds on our goal. It continues from last year around professional development and building high-impact teaching strategies. And this will continue some of the work that has already been started and will also build in some new information. The last bullet on that slide I thought was a really good suggestion that came out from one of our stops in the schools, and that is to build a common language around what we mean by high-impact teaching strategies. So sometimes you can say that, but what I think is a high impact could be different than what somebody else does. So I think it's really important to build that common language so that everybody is understanding the same information. And the other area is really around continuing our focus on scaffolding, structured lessons, explicit instruction, and that collaborative planning and reasoning. And I won't read through all of the bullets that are on there, but it builds on what we've already started and provides additional feedback, and some really quite a few people also expressed wanting to have PD in the areas of understanding bias and how to work with that, and around our goal around creating a belonging environment and how to help that for all students.
And then under innovative practices, we tried to become more specific, looking in content at content. One area that we'll be focusing on is expanding civic understanding among our pre-K to 12 students. Really thinking about that civics education curriculum, covering topics about government, constitution, rights and responsibilities. I think the general idea is we want our outcomes for our students to be that they are active and they are informed and they understand their role as citizens. And so, helping them figure that out, what it would look like. Looking at both digital literacy and media literacy, looking at environmental literacy skills, ensuring that civics education is inclusive, diverse, and reflects the perspectives of all students. There is a group, and the two humanities directors, both at the middle school and the high school, have worked very hard in thinking about revisiting some of the civics work that's going on. There's a lot of legislation around civic understanding, and so they're working really hard to make sure that we have all of that incorporated into both like civics and REACH projects and that sort of thing. And then finally, promoting climate change awareness. There's a shift here to think moving more from how many bottles are we recycling to how are we empowering our students to become and understand how to make positive contributions. And some of that really is looking at areas of the curriculum that we can develop some environmental literacy and improved understanding of climate science, environmental issues, and interconnectedness of ecosystems, building interdisciplinary knowledge, looking at potential career paths in environmental science, sustainability, renewable energy, and related fields, heightening awareness of the consequences of human activities on the environment, and encouraging responsible decision-making. So shifting away from the technical operations of sustainability to developing our students to be really strong climate-aware citizens. So that is what we have for our district improvement plan.
Could you put up the summary slide that has the goals that you wish
Focus areas?
for us to have a motion to approve?
There you go.
The focus areas for 24-25. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. And now do we have questions or discussion?
Madam President, could I want to make sure I understand the difference between the goals and the focus areas.
So those are the goals for, so that there are, thank you, that's a good question. These are goal areas for the three-year life of the plan. And then individually, we're going to focus on these areas for the 24-25 school year.
Okay.
To help.
Thank you. Yes, so I have a question.
Yep.
I really get stuck when I don't see the word rigor. And my question is, how do we ensure that we are developing the strongest curriculum, delivering the absolute best instruction, and realizing consistently high achievement?
That is really the focus of this particular goal, empowering educators for high-impact teaching strategies, taking a look at making that is what that is about. That's about strong instruction at the Tier 1 level and making sure that we're holding a high level of rigor in the academics that we have.
So as I have that down here as a note, and one of my questions was, how do you define high-impact teaching strategies? Or
We look at it as really supporting educators, and jump in if I say the wrong thing, but supporting our educators as they're developing their lessons, as they're implementing their lessons, as they're holding expectations for students, and making sure that there's explicit instruction and collaborative reasoning all going on at the same time.
So with the district improvement plan we just finished, one of our goals was to build a rigorous curriculum. And thanks to a lot of the ESSER money, we were able to change all of the curriculum at the high school curriculum materials. We've updated English and math at the elementary levels and have really put in foreign language at the high school. We've just finished math and now this year ELA at the middle school. And so now we're moving to the next level. I always explain it as a triangle. So when we look at trying to achieve our goals, we want to always look at curriculum, instruction, and assessment. We've done a lot of work with the curriculum building to make sure that it's rigorous and challenging. We've worked on building common assessments, and now the third part of that triangle is focusing on instructional strategies. And so that's where this comes in. So it's all kind of a partnership to achieve the final goal.
Okay. I mean, it feels like we always should be holding right up front and center. Strong curriculum, fantastic, great, world-class instruction, and high achievement.
So we believe that that's
Okay,
the outcome of this goal.
I guess if we go back to the goals. One more. Right.
So empowering educators is sort of
All right,
with
I don't,
professional development and innovative practices.
I'm not excited about the wording.
Okay.
It feels like it's missing.
What if we call it innovative, rigorous practices?
I mean, you know, I know what I believe is
Yep.
most critically important.
We agree with you.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve the focus areas within the goals for 24-25. There more questions or comments? Ms. Robinson?
I just wanted to say to Mayor Cahill, I think that's why it's so important to address our values, because world-class instruction comes from empowered educators who stay in our community. So I think that's why it's so important to, I had to address that, because I think that what you said was very important. And if we want to hold on to our teachers, we're going to have to make sure that we show where our values are.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Anyone else? Motion on the table is, Dr. Silva.
So I see these bullets, and I'm wondering, how do you, like, what's the measure to know that you've gotten there
So there
for all of these?
those goal areas, so each one has the attached goal.
Your mic.
Each one of these are the individual benchmarks, and so we follow them along. We not only look and see how are we doing on each one of these benchmarks, but we do have early, we look at midpoints, how are we doing along them, look at data and collect them. So these are the individual benchmarks for each one of the goals.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Sorry, so just to expand on that, I guess what we're maybe looking at is these are the outcomes we want, but you're saying that, it's done in a way that's measurable. Is
Yep.
clarification.
And I think I have to apologize, because I think in my desire to create a document that better represents our schools and that I'm showing it to you in slide form, because we've talked about a lot of these things, but the document in the end will have individual, all of those little pieces tied in it. And so, I guess.
So I guess one of the things I'm getting at is, I hear that we've changed the curriculum, we're building a rigorous curriculum. And so the other side of that is the measure to show that what you've built is actually educating students above, at a level that you aspire to, and that, that there's a metric that you're sharing with us to show us the progress in doing that.
I was going to say, we bring our data forward to you in terms
Okay,
of
so
the MCAS data when we bring it forward, when we bring, at the CISL meetings, when we bring forward all of the benchmark data. We spend a lot of time, I think, providing data in that way. Those are the measures. These are the outcomes that we want from our goals. So these are broader goal areas in that regard.
And so the ask for the school committee this evening is to approve the focus areas.
Yep. To
so
further
that
define.
Dr. Chorocek and the team can further build out that document. So we're sending them on their mission over the summer. What a fun summer. Mayor Cahill.
I guess I struggle with the word rigor being in that front page, with a few bullet points, and one of them is all about rigor. And is it anywhere in any of these pages going forward? Is it in a single bullet? Or are there
So
synonyms for it?
rigor is your interaction with content. That's what the definition of rigor is, how deeply you interact with content.
Okay.
So I guess that I believe that there's rigor in our building civics understanding, there's rigor in our climate, I can tell you this, as we build the document, we certainly will get more feedback from all of you if there are pieces of language that you would like us to talk about how we wordsmith them or what they look like. I can add, and I think that would be a great great opportunity to bring it in as a draft and let everybody provide more feedback on it.
And in fairness, I'm not wedded to the word. It's the strength of curriculum.
So you don't, so I guess I'm hearing from you, you're not feeling like we are holding ourselves to a high enough standard? That's kind of what I'm hearing you say, and I don't know if that's really what you're saying or not.
It's late, and there are a lot of slides, and you try to present them quickly of necessity. I guess what I want to say, I'm not wedded to the word rigor, but it's the strength of curriculum, which I understand and here and I've seen it, and I think we've done a lot of great work on curriculum, and I think there's a lot of greatness in instruction day in and day out, and that needs to be really a constant, always focus.
Mm-hmm.
And the outcome of all of that helps our students to achieve at high levels. So I don't want to say I'm wedded to that one word. It's more the all of it.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. If you could put the focus areas 24, 25 back up, this is what we are voting on to instruct the superintendent to move forward. Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor? I'm counting 7-0. Thank you, Dr. Churchak.
Yep. And that is all I have for my report.
Okay. I don't know if the lights are still set as they were for the public hearing for 11 instead of 10.
I think so.
But I do appreciate the late hour, and the chair does have important items, but they're not urgent this evening. So I will move yet again, third time, fourth time, our look at the policies that are listed for a second review. For the F&F chair, I'm going to make that decision as well to move those to our next regular meeting. For the school committee and superintendent norms and protocols, I think we've all signed them except for Dr. Silva, but I'd also like to be able to afford ourselves some conversation, and so I will move those as well. For the school fall committee, I will just mention that we spoke with our students, and they believe that they can have more participation for our student advisories if we offer it at a remote meeting time. 5 o'clock seems to be an okay time. We don't know who will serve on the student advisory committee yet. I think their elections are happening right about now. But I want everyone to consider this, and we'll be prepared to vote on that at our next regular meeting. Just want to remind you that next regular meeting is on June 12th. We have CISL at 6:30, a regular school committee at 7:30. We also have Finance and Facilities, our last scheduled spring meetings on June 26th. Our negotiating subcommittee meetings are going to be very frequent. The ones on the calendar to date are 5/23, 6/3, 6/17, and 6/26 for an extended session. However, I have asked the subcommittee to provide additional dates, and we will be meeting, of course, tomorrow with our Unit C focus. We also, by our own policy, have a retreat. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot tonight to come up with a topic, date, or location, but I will be sending an email to find if we have a common time and any ideas on topic or location. That's something that we do need to entertain. Appreciate it's budget season, and we'll be at City Hall for a good number of weeks, days, multiple days over 2 weeks. So with that, we will be seeing all of this that's in our packet in a couple weeks' time. And the chair moves that we vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and not to return to open session Purpose 7 is to review and approve the minutes from our executive session meeting of May 8th, 2024. Purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the BTA and AFSCME units, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. The chair has made the motion.
No, it's your birthday. Oh,
Oh, Dr. Silva
he jumped
steals the
us both.
second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. This does require us to do a roll call vote, and I haven't written all of the names down here, so I don't forget anyone. I will start with Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Visnick,
Yes.
and Ms. Abel, yes. By 7-0 at 10:13 PM, the school committee has now entered into executive session. This is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and we will not return to open session. Thank you, BevCam. Thank you for everyone who joined us from home this evening or wherever you are in the remote world. We appreciate your attendance, and thank you for everyone who watches us at home. Have a great evening.